things. I've just gone live.
Like withdrawing.
Perfect.
Okay, just be mindful, I have the echo.
But help is available.
Dad
Yes.
Okay,
went to VA
thanks so
for
much.
one-on-one and group therapy and got some really great tools to help him manage things. And I got my dad back.
Listen to hundreds of inspiring stories at maketheconnection.net and learn how you can support the veterans in your life. Treatment works. Recovery is possible.
Hi.
Testing 1 2 3. 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 Testing 1 2 3.
Military dogs.
Testing 1 2 3.
Hold on, Darren.
All right.
Can you
Sounds
hear
good
him?
on my end.
You can hear him?
Yep.
Okay, very good.
Sniffing out bombs and IEDs.
All right.
Locating enemy positions.
Let's have a great show. I believe we have about 3 minutes.
Okay,
With
great.
almost unimaginable circumstance. Yet, when these brave K9 heroes retire, they're not always given the same treatment as our military VIPs and are too often left overseas. American Humane works to bring home these valiant dogs and reunite them with the people who mean the most to them, their handlers, so they can enjoy happy, healthy, well-deserved retirements. To learn how you can help America's four-footed heroes, visit AmericanHumane.org.
Okay, very good. That's what I was looking for.
Serving part-time in the Army National Guard has led to a lot of firsts for me. The education assistance I received made it possible for me to be the first person in my family to go to school and graduate debt-free. That education helped get me to the first day at my dream job, a job that I can still hold while I serve part-time. That job, plus the other benefits possible from the Army National Guard, helped me become a first-time homeowner. Also, part of my role as a National Guard soldier means I know that I can be one of the first to respond and help my community if disaster ever strikes. I'm extremely proud that I get to serve my community, and that first step I took by joining the Army National Guard has made all the difference in my life. Talk to your local recruiter or visit nationalguard.com to find out what firsts are available to you in the Army National Guard.
Sponsored by the Illinois Army National Guard, aired by the Illinois Broadcasters Association at this station.
This is your WCPT Progressive Calendar.
2 minutes.
Thursday,
Okay, thank
October
you, so
5th from
that's
6:30
excellent.
to 8:30
Thank you.
p.m. You're invited to a free presentation on the Electoral College at the College of Lake County Lakeshore campus. The program will include a historical perspective on the Electoral College and an overview of the League of Women Voters position that advocates for moving towards a direct popular vote of the president. The event is co-sponsored by League of Women Voters of Grays Lake, Round Lakes, and Waukegan, and League of Women Voters of Highland Park, Highwood, and takes place at the Eleanor Murphy Community Center, 34 North Sheridan Road in Waukegan. Tuesday, October 10th at 11:30 a.m., Illinois Secretary of State Alexi Janulius will discuss services and initiatives of his office. The luncheon discussion event is co-sponsored by the Union League Club of Chicago and the Lincoln Forum, and the price is $35 per person. It takes place at the Union League Club of Chicago, 65 West Jackson Boulevard in Chicago.
This is John Daniel, President and Business Manager of the Sheet Metal Workers of
1 minute.
65.
Okay.
Workers across Illinois shared a victory last November when the Workers' Rights Amendment passed. There are some who believe that this was for the sole benefit of unions. Although unions brought it to the table, we did it for the benefit of all workers across our state. If you work at a coffee shop, a sheet metal shop, or a corporate office, all workers deserve a safe and respectful workplace, a fair living wage to raise their families, affordable
All right,
and
everybody, let's
expansive
have a
health
great
insurance to
show.
protect their families, and a dignified
Darius, you're
retirement
going to be
at the end
pushed
of their
on
working
Saturday?
career. Unions fight.
I am.
Okay,
Basic rights.
great.
This amendment blocks anti-worker legislation that continues to negatively
All right,
impact
well,
families
let's try and do
across
something
many other states,
together.
including lowering wages.
I'm going to be there early too because Jeanette asked me to kind of
There was
sort
a lot of buzz when this amendment was up.
run
I
things or,
believe the real buzz should be
Well,
now.
then you-
keep things in order or flow.
Class.
I know.
Learn more about us at
Needs to happen.
smart265.org.
Alexa, play
Stand by.
T.
Okay.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Thank you. Let's have a great show.
We can change the world,
Let's do it.
change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. It is Thursday, October 5th, 2023. I am Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today. This House Speaker race is heating up. Prominent conservative Jim Jordan has thrown his hat into the ring, as has Steve Scalise. He's the House Majority Leader. And they both have very interesting pasts, troublesome. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about particularly Steve Scalise. Well, I think both of them, but today we're going to really look at Steve Scalise and him calling himself the David Duke without the baggage. And I think that we're going to flesh out the context in which he said that, because you would have to understand Jefferson Parish. He represents Louisiana. He would, should he become speaker, he'd become the most powerful Louisianan in the history of the House since Hale Boggs, which is a big deal. Of course, his Cokie Roberts and his son Tommy Boggs went on to become very, very prominent. Cokie Roberts as an ABC reporter, news journalist. Tommy Boggs, one of the top lobbyists in the United States, both based in Washington. And he would become very, very powerful. But you got to understand Jefferson Parish. Jefferson Parish was the beneficiary of white flight. New Orleans always had a heavy Black population, but during the 60s, it shifted. And the Black population of New Orleans went as high as 68%. And then you had white flight to Jefferson Parish, which is why David Duke was able to gain traction in that area, because it was a lot of Black resentment that drove the growth of that parish. That is the place that Stephen Scalise represents. And it is in that context that he spoke at a white nationalist convention. He couldn't say that he didn't know that David Duke was part of it, because David Duke was part of it. It's a European, and its title, it talked about uniting people of European descent. So the press have given him a pass on it. They talk about him, of course, courageously surviving being shot in 2017 at the Congressional Baseball Game. It's an annual game, charity game. And then, of course, he has been battling cancer successfully, thank God. And we pray for his swift recovery and his full and complete recovery. But we need to look at who he is. I mean, other people, if you if you did something that was supportive of the hatred of another group or race, we'd be talking about it. But somehow or another, when it happens to Black people, it's something that, well, got to get over it, and, you're being too sensitive. No, I'm not being too sensitive. I think if one person is offended, everybody ought to be offended. So I think he needs to come out and fulsomely reject David Duke and his philosophy. Am I getting an amen from you, Pastor Darius Brooks? I mean, it is offensive to me. David Duke was the head of the KKK. You can't tell me that you're David Duke without the baggage. What does that mean? What does that mean? And how dare you say that in America, given what the KKK did to Black people, did to Jewish people, did to Catholics? And yes, Steve Scalise is Catholic, but he's white. And people always lean on that shield, and we need to talk about that today. We need to talk about that. What is he saying about this today, and why is the corporate media giving him a pass? So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, because in all of the descriptions of Steve Scalise, you are not hearing anything about that. And that was a big story. And Yvette Clarke, the congresswoman from Brooklyn, New York, has now asked for there to be another look at what he said, because he is in line to become speaker. He's the House Majority Leader. He might not have 218 votes now, but he can do that. Remember, the House Speaker, not only are they third in the line of succession to the presidency, they become the top fundraiser, not just for the legislative branch, but for the party. This is a very, very powerful position. Very powerful. So call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Even Dr. Max Wolf, who typically talks about economics, he said, I want in on this discussion on the House speakership and all that's been going on. So I want you to call me today. I'm going to work very hard to incorporate all of your calls into the show. So call me right now at 773-763-9278. Carol, I love you. My sister out there from another mister out there in Beverly Hills. She said, oy vey. Oh, and may God bless you in this Yom Kippur season. So let's talk, everybody. Call me at 773-763-9278 at WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. And I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson YouTube channel. Let's go to some of these headlines from the Washington Post. The race to become the next House Speaker has begun. Majority Leader Steve Scalise, Republican from Louisiana, and firebrand conservative Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio, announced their bids yesterday to replace the ousted Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Republican from California. This has never happened in the history of the Republic since 1789. We've never had a speaker voted out. It happened a couple of days ago. House business is at a standstill until we get a new speaker. Lawmakers may vote on a new speaker as soon as next Wednesday when they go back into session after Tuesday. McCarthy's unprecedented removal is a warning sign that American democracy, according to this report, is in trouble. Well, certainly we're at an inflection point. And let's talk about that too. The turmoil in Congress could impact aid for Ukraine. Indeed, it turns on aid for Ukraine. Why don't you call me, let me know, what do you think about it? Because within the next 41 days or so, the budget standoff will be reignited. First, you got to get a speaker, but now we've got to also find out about this budget. And some hardliners are saying, wait a minute, and more Americans are questioning the level of support or the support for Ukraine, certainly when so many resources are needed in the United States. So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Should the budget standoff turn on Ukraine? Should it be removed and then we just have a debate on Ukraine and how we're going to assist them? You call me, let me know. President Biden announced $9 billion more in student loan forgiveness. It affects 125,000 borrowers who are eligible for 3 existing federal relief programs. He's been working very hard at that, everybody. And the banks are pushing back against the president. You need to let him know that you support him. And maybe we need to start taking on these banks. Scientists discovered how dozens of genes may contribute to autism. While simulating brain development in a lab, researchers found genes that interfere with key steps in that process and could lead to autism. And we're finding that several things happen. Now, 1 in 8 households in the United States have seen a drop in income, certainly since last month. And FBI has now targeted MAGA as a domestic terrorist group, and they're really looking at Trump supporters for 2024. What do you think of that? Life expectancy has continued to drop in the United States, but not because of COVID or these other illnesses. It's because of heart disease. It's breast cancer. Chronic illnesses are killing Americans. It says something about the healthcare that we are not getting. And food stamps will be harder to get. And those are some of the headlines, everybody. Congratulations to the Minnesota Twins. For the first time in 21 years, you have won your postseason bid. They are now in the running to get into the World Series. They won their wild card series, everybody. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 69 degrees and showers. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 63 degrees. Partly cloudy. Major League Baseball, as I shared, the Twins shut out the Blue Jays 2-0. The Diamondbacks 5-2 over the Brewers, and the Phillies 7-1 over the Marlins. And tonight in the NFL, the Chicago Bears will be playing the Washington Commanders at 7:15 p.m. And those are the headlines. Pastor Darius Brooks, you are getting people fed throughout just twice a week. Let us know how we can do that and how we can worship with you, and then you give us the good news.
Santita Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois, right off of 290 in Manheim. Santita, every Tuesday, the year before the pandemic, even through the pandemic, and right now we're excited. From 5 till 7, we feed 8 different townships and anybody who comes. We give between $200 and $300 worth of food. I'm not playing with you, Santita. Eggs, milks, chicken, salmon, bread, Jiffy Mix, produce. When I tell you, you leave with $300 to $400 worth of food every Tuesday from 5 till 7. And on Wednesdays, we do seniors, so they won't be out in the evening from noon till 2. GraceCentral.net, GraceCentral.net. We feeding the hungry. We're setting the captives free. Not just saying it, Santita, doing it. Grace Central Church of GraceCentral.net. Please reach out to us. No one should be going without food.
Amen.
Particularly. Hey, Santita, I'm excited about the word today. Proverbs 10:21 through 22. The lips of the righteous feeds many, but fools die for want of wisdom. The blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, and addeth no sorrow with it. Santita, I'm excited about this word. It's not an irony. God has it well planned. Girl, I'm about to run up and shout about it. Unchecked self can keep you for years unhealthy and unwise. It is also one that keeps one bitter and lost and in a hurtful place, Santita. The longer I struggle with me or whoever struggle with themselves, in which God has already has the end result done, the more me, you, or anyone to this matter becomes overwhelmed. I don't care what's on your plate. You want in on this God conversation because we must flex out God's context. The lesson and wisdom that's in and through God's word is timeless, and it affects, matures, disciplines, makes accountable and responsible, and blesses anyone who embraces it. One of the ways to embrace his promise is to surrender to his will, to his word, to his way. Not church stuff, not man's definition of family or the ways of how we see the world is operating. And you can surrender, Santita, 2 ways. Saying this is crazy and it's not fair is a way of surrendering to the enemy's way of perspective. Nothing can be done there. The other way is when we surrender and commit totally in and through God's word. This kind of surrender doesn't give up nor give in, and it's never afraid. If you are afraid, 1 John 4:8 says, there's no fear in love. Love casts out all fear, because fear has to do with a sense of loss or losing or punishment. And one who fears is not made perfect in love. As I close, Santita, God blesses us when we're faithful, guides us when we're clear, builds us when we're intentional, strengthens us when we're confident, leads us when we seek him, protects us when we surrender, informs us when we desire to be wise, and keeps us in perfect peace when we produce his promises in our plans. Santita, I just heard on your show Smokey Bear saying, only you can prevent wildfire. So you should acquire as you aspire to inspire before you expire, to make sure you keep God in his place and keep reminding yourself, Darius, it's not an irony. God has it well planned.
Amen to that. Amen, amen, amen. Thank you for that. And how can we worship with you on Sunday? And again, how can we get that food from you?
Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois, 10:30 till noon. And on Tuesdays from 5 till 7, every Tuesday from 5 till 7 for general public. And then on Wednesdays, seniors can come from noon till 2 to receive our giveaways and our food giveaways. And please come. Santita, we had them around the corner, about 19 blocks.
Wow.
On this Tuesday, feeding people. We're excited. If people make a difference, don't pay attention to what's happening. Just do what God told you to do. Don't try to figure out what God is doing. Just do what he told you to do. We can put a dent in where we are. Santita, I'm so proud of you. The information that you've given on this radio station, I'm telling you, is bigger than you can ever think or imagine. I know you know, but we have no clue of the lives we touch and the people we meet doing the things God is telling us to do. We may never meet them.
Absolutely.
We may never see you doing it, girl. You are doing it.
And you are too. And I cannot wait to see you on Saturday at Rainbow Push. We're going to be celebrating Reverend Jackson's 82nd birthday. So get on over to Rainbow Push by 10 o'clock at 930 East 50th Street. But I've got Dr. Shanina Knighton with us today. Reverend, what should I say, Pastor Darius Brooks. And, what did you want to talk about? Dr. Knighton, sending you so much love today. We love you, love you, love you. So glad that you're here. What's on your mind? I mean, and I have to tell you, I'm disturbed by this headline, but I think this is a longer discussion that we need to have about this epidemic of chronic illness that's killing Americans. I mean, we thought it was COVID and so forth and so on now, but it's heart disease, it's breast cancer, it's all of these diseases that are so curable, Dr. Knighton. Wow. But what's on your mind today?
Well, I think that that's a good place to start because I think that it all still essentially comes down to everything that I talk about, which is prevention. And so infection prevention is more than just talking about hand hygiene. It is talking about nutrition. It's talking about what we put in our body. It's talking about how we take care of our body and how all of those things relate to infection, right? And so when we think about chronic conditions, one of the topics that I will continue to talk about is going to still be hygiene poverty and its relationship to infection prevention and control. And the reason why we can tie chronic conditions into that is because if someone is unable to have the resources to manage their environment that is around them, to be able to, let's say, safely, whether that's launder their clothes and even something as simple, Santita, as taking care of their teeth, oral hygiene or the lack thereof can lead to illnesses, meaning that these are individuals that could end up with, let's say, some sort of like pneumonia from the bacteria that's in their mouth. Then the bacteria in their mouth then tends to spread. They end up with sepsis, which is an infection of the entire body. That infection of the entire body starts to cause something called multi-organ, something syndrome, okay? And what that does, and I want to say it's a disease syndrome, but I know that that's not it. What happens is the organs begin to fail. So when the organs begin to fail, you remember, you only get one set of kidneys. You got a liver, but the good thing about the liver is the liver can keep on replenishing itself or reforming and making itself over again. But the same thing in terms of only getting one heart, one set of lungs. So if those systems are impacted, okay, then that ends up causing irreversible damage to those organs. The same way that if someone ends up with diabetes because they're not managing their sugar correctly, that cannot be reversed because you then have the impact of someone having ineffective endocrine system that is impacting their body. Same thing with the ineffective heart. If you have congestive heart failure or you have some sort of heart disease, it's impacting your heart so much so to where blood is not pumping appropriately where it needs to. And if blood is not getting where it needs to when we're talking about these organs, that then leads to more chronic conditions. Those chronic conditions are susceptible. Those chronic conditions, wherever it is, means that those organs are then susceptible to infection. That's why when you have older adults who innately are going to be more at risk for having more chronic conditions, they are also more at risk for infection. And this is why that phenomena happens, is because if you are vulnerable and your body, your immune system is weakened as a result of having a chronic condition, then you're going to be more likely to have these infections. So they do go hand in hand. And the one thing, unfortunately, that is rarely discussed is the impact that food plays into that. Meaning, we have family history where chronic conditions may be around, they're going to prevail, but then if you mismanage it, meaning if, let's say you got diabetes, but you continue to eat lots and lots of refined sugars, that's going to continue to have a negative effect. And at some point, your kidneys will not be able to filter things out correctly. Your body won't be able to heal itself if we're talking about wounds. There are a lot of things that tend to happen where your body is not functioning to be able to heal itself. That's why I always say prevention is better than treatment. So when we talked a couple weeks ago about going to get a primary care doctor and making sure that you're getting a checkup, it's essential because prevention is better than treatment. And if someone is telling you, hey, you're on the verge of diabetes, you're on the verge of having some blockage in your heart, making sure you are doing things to reverse it is going to be way better than treating it.
Pneumonia coming out of not having proper oral hygiene is just unbelievable. And the fact is, dental insurance doesn't pay for anything. Dental care, now that'll send you into bankruptcy, and you know you got to pay that stuff up front, Dr. Knighton. You can always tell when someone is fairly well off when they have a fine set of teeth. Oh,
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And that's the reality.
That's the reality. Stay right here, everybody. We'll be talking during the break, but let's talk about Steve Scalise. He's the man who is the leader, the House Majority Leader. He could become the Speaker. And he said that he is David Duke, the former head of the KKK, without the baggage. What do you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278, or does that not matter to you at all? Back in just a minute.
This is John Daniel, President and Business Manager of the Sheet Metal Workers of Smart Local 265.
Stay right there,
Workers
Dr.
across
Knighton. Could
Illinois
you,
shared a victory last
Henry,
November
can you
when the
turn that
Workers'
down a
Rights
bit so
Amendment
that
passed.
Dr.
There are
Knighton
some
and I
who
can
believe
speak
that
during the break? Thank you. You're not
Sorry about that.
No. You don't have to. I'm just reminding you, honey. That's all. It's okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. So, Dr. Knighton, you're going to stick with us for a minute?
Sure.
Okay. I'm sure you want to hear about Steve Scalise, the man who would be Speaker. He said he's David Duke without the baggage.
Is that what he said?
Oh, absolutely. You know, the former head of the KK. Absolutely. It became a bit of a kerfuffle about 6 or 7 years ago. But they're not mentioning it at all right now. You know, they're talking about him being shot in 2017. That's understandable. And he's battling cancer right now. And we certainly do pray for his recovery, for his full recovery, recovery. Yes.
So far, we have Dwight McKee, Dr. Gibbs, and Attorney Jones. I'm still working on getting Attorney Mathis, but I've not gotten them yet.
But if you can't, that's okay.
Perfect.
We can try her again at 7. Okay.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Fantastic. Let me bring them up so I can say hello. Dr. Gibbs, how are you?
Good morning, Santita. I'm fine.
Thank you so much. I realize it's your teaching day, so I'm going to give you this runway in this half hour, of course. And Dwight McKee, how are you?
Pretty fair.
Great. Attorney Jones?
Coming along. Hey, good morning.
Great hearing your voice. You know, it's interesting. And of course, Dr. Knighton is still with us. She always wants to hear what you all have to say. My brilliant. I'm just going to I'm not going to call you the contrarians. I just think you're truth tellers. But it makes you contrarians. It certainly won't get you an invitation to corporate media, but that's all right. This is what we've got. All we're trying to do is tell the truth and spread it. Hey, Vanessa Avery, how you doing? And Nicole and Andre and Robert and Paula, how you doing? Barbara Bacon from Oak Park. Joyce, how you doing, sweetie? Jewel from up there in New York. Robert, I'm going to say hello to you guys on the air, too. Sending you all so much love today. Carol from out there. Oy vey. She's coming through the Yom Kippur season, sending you so much love, my beloved sister. Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia. Lest we forget Raphael, how you doing, sweetie? And Vanessa, how are you? Vanessa, where are you reaching out to us from? Let me know. And Flora, where are you? Everybody, let me know where you are. You know, please don't take it for granted. Hey, Nicole, that I know where you're from. And Barbara wants to thank Pastor Brooks. Oh, bless your heart, Joyce. And that's
2 minutes.
That's right. Okay, that's all right. That's all right. So, okay, you guys, I'm looking through a whole lot of things. Okay. Love you, Jewel. Love all of you. And Jewel is sending everyone on the panel so much love today. And so there you go, everybody. Give the Morning Stars a shout out, everyone. Say hello. They're the reason we're still here. Dr. Gibbs and Dwight and Daryl Jones, y'all need to say hello to our listeners. Hello.
Hey, Morning Stars.
Thank you, Dr. K, as they call you.
Yeah, good morning, Morning Stars. Oh, yeah. Love the Morning Stars.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Act like you know. The reason we're here.
Hey, tell them we wake up too.
Oh, my word. But I'm glad you all are here today. We got a lot to talk about because this is going to be they're still not, it's interesting. You have two such prominent Republicans, Dr. Gibbs and Dwight McKee and Attorney Jones, Daryl, throw their hats into the ring. This is going to be very interesting. And it makes me wonder how long well, hopefully somebody's going to cut some kind of deal because we're coming up on another potential government shutdown.
Back in 30.
But we have to get a speaker first. You cannot conduct any House business without a speaker. It's ridiculous. Oh, Steve Bannon's jumping up and down saying that this was a great thing. I'm like, are you kidding me? And the Republicans are trying to blame Democrats for this. They know what they did. Just ridiculous. Ugh. Okay, stand by. Everybody.
Stand by.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station at AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, sending a special shout out to the Minnesota Twins, who for the first time in 21 years won a true postseason bid, having fought their way through the wild card phase of the playoffs. Congratulations to you. Let's talk about this House speakership. What is going on? You have two controversial persons who have tossed their hats into the ring, two persons who are very popular within the caucus. What's going to happen? You have the House leader, the House Majority Leader, that's Steve Scalise, and many are talking about his surviving a shooting at the congressional baseball game. It's a charity game that they have in the spring of every year. And he was shot, but he survived, thank God, in 2017. And he's been battling cancer. But those treatments have been going well, thank God. And we certainly sent our prayers to him. Jim Jordan, former wrestling coach. There was a scandal at his former university. And they said, well, a lot of these players were sexually abused. And he knew about it. So there's that. But let's look at Steve Scalise today. Steve Scalise, who, as the House Majority Leader, as the leader of the Republicans, certainly one would think that he at least has a bit of an inside track to become Speaker of the House. But it's disturbing when you look at someone who's this prominent, who several years ago, there was a bit of a kerfuffle. What was it about? Because he called himself the David Duke without baggage. Who was David Duke? David Duke was the head of the Klan who really mainstreamed the Klan in the 1970s. Almost becoming governor of Louisiana. Yeah. So when you say that you are the David Duke without the baggage in the 2010s, what does that mean? And what is the context in which he did that? Just very briefly, he's from a place called Jefferson Parish in Louisiana. What is Jefferson Parish? Jefferson Parish is a place that really mushroomed after white flight from New Orleans. New Orleans was a majority white city, but you had a healthy, significant Black presence. But into the 60s and 70s, it became like a Black metropolis. 68% of the city, Black. And so whites moved away from New Orleans and they mushroomed Jefferson Parish. And so, okay, that's interesting. And so this is where David Duke got a toehold. That is the seat of his power. Jefferson Parish. That is also the seat of Stephen Scalise's power. So he's had a relationship with David Duke and with his advisors. And so when he says that he's the David Duke without baggage, KKK, the head of the KKK, the man who mainstreamed the KKK, they say, into Louisiana politics. How do you feel about that? And what does all of that mean? Of course, we've got brilliant social scientist, Dr. D, affectionately known as that, but he really is that. Dwight McKee, the dean of the Ma'afa Redemption Project. And of course, we've got Attorney Darrell Jones, chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition, brilliant voting rights and civil rights lawyer. But we're going to start with you, historian, history professor from the University of Arizona, Dr. Gibbs, our own in-house historian. What do you make of this declaration that indeed Yvette Clarke, the congresswoman from Brooklyn, from the Congressional Black Caucus, said, I think we need to revisit what he said, because that's a big deal. Or is it not a big deal, Dr. Gibbs?
It's hard to see how he can get away from the fact that this is a big deal indeed. And it does fit into a long-standing strategy of the Republican Party. And again, this is ironic since this was, of course, the party of Abraham Lincoln, but that was a long time ago. And certainly since the 60s, particularly since Richard Nixon's presidency, they have explicitly been adopting what Nixon called the Southern strategy, which is to try and make the former Confederacy a new base for the Republican Party, which has largely been achieved, including places like Louisiana, evidently including places like Jefferson Parish. Appealing, of course, to white sentiment in terms of racial issues, racial hostility, racism, basically. And this is not a new thing, but it's certainly something that has long roots, going back at least 50 years, as a technique of the Republican Party. And it's not something they've repudiated, certainly not completely. Scalise can be seen, his comment about wanting to be David Duke without the baggage. I'm not even sure what that means. How can you do it without the baggage? I'm not quite sure what that comment even means, but it certainly is a way of signaling that he's very much part of that Southern strategy, including its most odious features. We can't, when we consider the issue of a possible speakership by Scalise, we can't get away from that comment or what that comment means in light of the larger Republican project.
It's interesting. The corporate media don't mention it at all. It was more of a story as he was emerging as a leader of the House, as a leader of the Republican faction of the House. But they're not talking about it right now, Dr. Gibbs. I mean, they're not mentioning it at all. We hear about the shooting in 2017, and thank God he survived that. And thank God that his cancer treatments are going well. Of course, we want him to be healthy and well. But this goes into the culture and the body politic of America. For you to claim really an alliance with the former head of the Klan is very unsettling, very, very unsettling. And I cannot imagine someone who would openly, Matt Gaetz brought a Holocaust denier to the 2018 State of the Union address. I mean, has he adequately explained that? No. But let's deal with Scalise. They're not talking about it, Dr. Gibbs. And, whenever we bring up anti-Black racism in particular, even though the Klan has stood against Jews and Catholics and on and on and on, just humanity in general, Black people told to stand down and to shut up. And I'm wondering why this is being ignored. Do you have any thoughts?
I don't really have a good explanation for that. It seems there's certainly no good reason to ignore this and pretend it's not there. I would expect that in coming days, if in fact, the votes are moving towards Scalise, to Scalise, and if he starts looking like he'll become the speaker, I would certainly hope this would come up as an issue. But you're right. I haven't seen much on this. The specific comment he made was made to a journalist in 2014. Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of record. I don't think he ever even denied making the comment. And it's definitely there. This is a kind of what has been called dog whistling, that you don't get kind of overt racism you used to get from people like George Wallace. You don't get it quite so much anymore now. What you get instead are subtle subtle signals, like this comment he made to a journalist, which I assume was made as a matter of calculation. It's a way of signaling to racists in places like Jefferson Parish that he's with them, but without being too overt about it. So there's a certain amount of calculation that goes into this kind of signaling. Again, I'm very surprised this hasn't been dealt with by the press. I know I don't have a good explanation for it.
Daryl Jones, your thoughts? I mean, have you seen this story anywhere? I mean, I've had to dig for it, and they really don't. I mean, you can't even find the announcement. Really, it's very hard to find the Mediaite story and the Hill story that reported on Yvette Clarke from the CBC member, the Congressional Black Caucus member from Brooklyn, who said, we need to look into this. No one's talking about it.
Good morning, Santita, and you're absolutely right. It really has been, kept under the radar with regards to it being exposed and laid out there. And really, a lot of people are probably just hearing for the first time Scalise describing himself as the David Duke without baggage. And you've got to begin to wonder, what exactly was he talking about? And clearly, it has, I can't even say racial undertones, they're racial overtones that are there. And we've got to wonder, why isn't it more of a conversation piece? Why isn't this something that should be leading the way? And one of the reasons that I think it has to be considered is, the party now, the Republican Party at this point in time, racism isn't a stop, right? It's not something that automatically ends a person's interest in the Republican Party. And I say that with this in mind: the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, one percenters, stand back and stand by, right? Good people on both sides, Charlottesville, Virginia. No one really saw that as end pieces. It wasn't something that was that from the 38% that support former President Trump, that was a stop. That was saying, I can't deal with this. This is not what I stand for. So it's sort of, scarily, foreseeable that you'll have someone like a Scalise that can say that I'm a David Duke without baggage and not lose much support. That he can say that and it not be reported heavily, because when it's compared to the other things that we have most recently experienced, that perhaps it's becoming sort of commonplace within that side of the aisle. And although it shouldn't be, the question now becomes, how do we be certain that this is raised up, that this is an issue? And if we raise it as an issue, if we blow it up, as they say, so everyone knows about it, does he actually get support from this the same way that former President Trump seems to be getting a bounce from all the legal action that's been framed against him? So it's an interesting period that we're in, and the water that we're navigating here. It's going to be, one of those things where we're going to have to watch and see how we need to deal with this from a strategic viewpoint. But more importantly, how is the Republican Party going to deal with this? Are they really going to push, those that are more inclusive in their view of society to the side for those that are have the views of that being David Duke without the baggage is a good thing?
Well, and since the Democrats want Black votes, what are they going to do? How will they defend Black people? See, that's my thing. No, I mean, it's not just the Republicans. This is an American dilemma. Thank you, Theodore Dreiser. No, we got an American dilemma here, and I need to hear the Democrats say something about this. I need to hear the president say something about it. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I do. Everybody needs to jump on this as they jump in defense of other people who have been aggrieved and who've been attacked, and who've been under attack, people who've lived under the boot of oppression. This ought to be an issue. Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Well, I see it a little differently. I'm glad he was at least honest enough to put it out there. A lot of these Republicans and Democrats are closet Klansmen, but wise enough not to let anybody know. And so you're kind of looking at the same mentality. It just has not been pronounced.
and they've not had a confession, but they think the same way. And it goes the gamut from Republicans and Democrats, from black and to white. I mean, Clarence Thomas and his wife don't think too much, in my opinion, don't think too much differently than Celeste. They just know how to encode it a different way. And you don't really it's not as transparent on the surface. But when you look at their policies and their philosophies, they really kind of play out the same way. I have a bigger concern. And that concern is that the Democrats don't seem to have a strategy to deal with this. I mean, the Lord said that if you cast out a demon, if you don't put the right something in the place of the demon you cast out, then he's gonna come back with seven demons 7 times worse than he is. And that's what we looked like we did yesterday in this fight. Is that now we're coming in dealing with demons who are 7 times worse than the one we got rid of. So I'm not stuck on Celia, and I'm not stuck on the Ku Klux Klan thing, because if you look at the philosophies and look at the mentality, he ain't the only one. There's a boatload full of folk that thinks just like him, and they run the gamut from the Republicans to the Democrats. And some we can see, some are transparent, some cloak it a little better than others. But I don't see any major difference between what David Duke was doing in the 70s and the 80s. You know, a little more extreme than what Biden was doing on busing in the prison industrial complex. And when you look at it, David Duke had no impact on Black life, where some of the other guys like Biden, who was in a position to create the policies that affected us, had far more impact and walked away. Him and Clinton walked away with 1 million Black people in jail over 10 years.
There's no question. And I absolutely agree with you on that. Absolutely. And we bring up those points all the time. But I'm also looking at realpolitik and how the grievances of different groups are handled differently. And so what is concerning to me, because you're right, in real, not just in real time, but actually in terms of policies and that which people do not say and what people do not defend. Yeah, Steve Scalise is not alone. Steve Scalise is not alone. And I am glad that he was honest. And he was speaking to his constituents in Jefferson Parish, who, by the way, when we had the tragedy of Katrina, and thank you for reminding me, Robert, Reverend Jackson had been in Venezuela with Hugo Chavez, President Chavez, and they saw the storm coming. And he immediately pulled together several Marine hospitals, Dr. Gibbs and Attorney Jones and Dwight McKee. And he said, Reverend, I will, let's call President Bush. Let me send them, he said, because this storm is really going to be bad. This is a bad one. And they saw it several days out. President Bush turned down the help. Now, mind you, Venezuela is just down the street, just across the Gulf, would not receive the help. And so, and the Bro brothers had a barge that was on the standing wall, which led into the Ninth Ward. They refused to move their barge. The barge, a big, huge boat, kept hitting the standing wall all night long. It badgered the wall throughout the night of the storm. And that's what happened in New Orleans. It broke the standing wall, which flooded the city, killed all those people. It was an absolute tragedy. And so you have that. So Reverend went to a Black leadership meeting in Atlanta, and he said, we need to leave this meeting and get to New Orleans. They decided to stay at the meeting. Reverend flew to New Orleans trying to get people out of there. And it was one of the most horrible, horrific scenes. I saw my father cry for days, Dwight, Dr. Gibbs, and Attorney Jones. because he said the streets were turned into rivers and you saw dead bodies just being rushed down the street. So when they were able to get some Black folks on the bus, or get just whoever they could find, get them primarily Black people, because those were the people who were absolutely impacted. They were trying to get them across the bridge to Jefferson Parish. And these Black people were threatened with death. If you cross this bridge, we will kill you. They had to turn around. That's Jefferson Parish. Okay. So it is in that context, when I hear him say this, and when it is reported that he says this, and I look at Jefferson Parish, I'm like, absolutely. We need to look at Biden busing. I brought that up and people have beaten me up about it. I'll take it. I got it. But it is in that context, Dr. Gibbs, that I think that this man could become the Speaker of the House. He's already the House leader. Dr. Gibbs.
Well, it's disturbing, but the possibility that a David Duke without baggage, to just quote him, may very well become the next Speaker of the House. And it does say something about the Republican Party, indeed, that's a possibility here. And I do agree with the comment made by Dwight that both parties, however, have had some. The Democrats are not guiltless in the appeal to sort of racist sentiment, and we do have as a matter of record, Joseph Biden has always, early in his career, he made a lot of headway politically by being against busing for racial integration. More moderate, quote unquote, more moderate elements in the Republican Party that the Democrats now like to celebrate. George Bush, you reminded us of his record during Hurricane Katrina, and it really was. It was poor, mostly Black people that were affected by this. One really can't get away from that. And there was a certain element of sort of politics in this that's undeniable. You mentioned Venezuela. Another thing to mention is Cuba. Around the same time, in a storm of greater intensity, and they evacuated everybody. Now, they didn't lose a single life. And Cuba is a much poorer country than the United States. And so it raises the question of, well, if Cuba could do that, why did the United States not do that? And I think the answer, again, it was political, that this was a constituency that the Bush administration didn't really care for, evidently, and the results were catastrophic. And so, this is, the issue of racism in the United States is a very deep issue, and it does run into both parties and the moderate faction of the Republicans, and yes, to some extent the Democrats too. But it seems especially intense right now with regard to the possibility of who may become Speaker of the House. It's a very immediate issue.
Why would it be important as you go? Is it important that the Speaker of the House, that he has this kind of background? Or maybe America's just having a very honest moment, Dr. Gibbs. I mean, why lie about who we really are?
Well, yes, it could be. I mean, perhaps we should, in some respects, appreciate the fact that Scalise was being honest about about what he's doing and about his intentions, and he sort of laid it out for us in 2014 as to maybe who he is, and that's and that could very well be the most important person in Congress, third in line for the presidency. That could very well happen.
Well, I want to hear your thoughts, everybody. And what do you think? How do you think this speaker race is going to shake out? I mean, we are about 40 days away from trying to avert another government shutdown. And Dr. Gibbs, it seems, and Dwight McKee and Attorney Darrell Jones, people have dug in their heels about Ukraine. They've dug in their heels. So what do you think about all of this? I mean, there's a lot at play here, but we first have to get a Speaker of the House. You cannot conduct any business without having a Speaker of the House, and the power of the purse rests in the House. That's how it's set up in our government. They're the ones who control the purse strings. They are the ones who construct the budget. That's why this is such a big deal. So call me at 773. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. I've got 1 minute before we go to break. Dr. Gibbs, I know you've got to go teach this morning. What would you like to say before you go?
Well, this is basic dysfunction of American democracy that we have that. We're seeing it now. And, it's also complicated, though, as you noted, by the issue of the Ukraine war and the fact that, the Republicans, including some really very bad Republicans with very bad records like Matt Gaetz, are basically opposing spending on the Ukraine war that could indeed go much more productively, in my view, into programs to help people in this country or help people overseas rather than blowing them up. And so the issue is complicated by the fact that the Republican Party, on the one hand, has these very negative features. On the other hand, strangely, and in a break from historical precedent, they're the ones at the moment who are taking the lead in opposing the Ukraine war. So I'm not quite sure what to make of the situation.
Do you think that we're going to have a debate on the Ukraine war? I mean, I've got about 10 seconds.
Yes, I think we are already having that debate. And I should add that on the left, finally, we've had Code Pink from the days of the war on terror, occupying congressional offices under pressure, and people like Bernie Sanders, who, I would have hoped would have basically played more of a leadership role on this, and so far has not. Maybe that'll change.
Maybe that will change. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show here on WCPT and AM 950 Radio in just a minute. Thank you so much, Dr. Gibbs. I was trying to get you out here, but I was trying to squeeze as much as I could out of you.
I really appreciate that. And glad to be again, Santita. You have a good day, okay?
You too. Blessings to you. Blessings to you. Dwight and Daryl, do you want to say anything before? While we're on break? How do you see all of this shaking out? Because we've got Ukraine. Do you think that's going to become a big debate, Dwight? Dwight?
No. Mm-mm.
You don't think? You think the money's just going to go through?
No, I think that if Jim Jones takes over, he's going to close down that war. Jim Jordan, I mean. Mm-hmm. I'm having a hard time hearing with that thing in the background.
I'm sorry, just hold on. I think that. Hold on one moment, because I've got to get this out. Okay. Pardon me.
I think that if Jim Jordan becomes the head of the Senate, he's going to close it down. He's pretty much already said that.
Of the House.
So I think Republicans have already made up their mind that this is going to stop, and they're in majority right now. I think it may be a fair debate on the Democratic side. I don't think there'll be a big debate on that side because they also seem to already have their minds made up. So I think that's going to come down to whoever the majority is and how they feel about it. But I don't see this, no real big debate. I think see it as whoever's in power is going to make that decision.
Well, what do you think will happen on the Senate side then if the House refuses to fund it?
Say that again.
What do you think will happen on the Senate side if the House refuses to fund Ukraine?
What can they do? I mean, the money comes from the House. What can they do?
And, Santita and Dwight, the other interesting piece to that, I think, is that, with the Ukraine issue and if the House decides, not to fund it, I'm not certain that the House doesn't have the support of the American people not to fund it based on what's going on within our own economy. Mm-hmm. And so if you have most of the American people saying, spend my money on me first, sort of supporting what the conservative side, Scalise, et cetera, Jim Jordan are saying with regards to Ukraine, it almost gives them, more standing to do it because they're capturing onto the emotion of a lot of the American people. So, I don't think the Senate would touch it if there's this groundswell of support from the American people that are behind the concept of redirect this money, don't fund this.
I think that's where the American. I know. I think that's where the American people are, quite frankly. And it's growing.
Daryl makes a great point.
Which is
Daryl, you make a great point. The point he just made is that they got the momentum of the American people, and they are in charge. then that's why I said I don't think it's going to be a big debate. I think they'll just close it down as much as they can. They may leave them some basic weapons to work with, so that it does not become genocidal. But for the most part, they're going to stop all that $1 billion here and $1 billion there.
No,
in my opinion.
Tens of billions here, tens of billions there. Here's 10 billions here, there, 10 billions. I mean, and here we are at past $100 billion when Americans are struggling like this. This is insane. Insane. And when I said this 2 years ago when this happened, oh, Santita, you're a Putin sympathizer. No, I'm not. I'm like, wait. First of all, should Putin have taken the bait? No. That having been said, I hear you, but Americans are hemorrhaging. I mean, when you listen to this data, 1 in 8 U.S. households saw a drop in income just last month alone. 99% Americans cannot afford to buy a home in 99% of the counties in the United States. Daryl and Dwight. Americans cannot afford to buy a home today. That is nuts. Help me. Gee whiz, what is this? So yeah, I mean, look, honey, you all, we have a lot of stuff to work out, and we're going to have to work through this. So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Where do you see all of this going? 773-763-WCPT. Okay. Do you think that do you think it's going to be a big fight for the speakership, or do you think that they're going to cut a deal just to bring things to a close? Dwight?
Cut a deal between who?
Whomever.
Democrats or Republicans?
No, not within their own caucus first. Within their own caucus first.
Oh, okay.
I mean, coming up like with a compromise candidate, because you already have 2 very powerful people who've thrown their hats in the ring, Scalise and Jordan.
Hi, Ms. Jackson.
For the most part, the deal is already.
We are going to be coming back in about a minute, but I was unfortunately unable to get Dr. Yuri ready to go.
Okay, we'll keep trying.
This is my opinion.
Will do.
I think they have already decided on Jordan. I think that his big deliverable is going to be he's committed to closing off this war. And he has been leading the charge on the impeachment for Biden. I think that the Republicans are going to declare war on the whole process, particularly the Democrats, with what they're doing to Trump, and they take that very personally. And you're going to see a proverbial war. You know, it may not be a physical war, but it's going to be a political war that they're going to declare. And there's going to be no corners that they want. There'll be nothing on the table. Well, let me say everything is going to be on the table in terms of their resistance to what the Democrats are doing.
We're about to come back in 15 seconds.
Okay,
Still wasn't able to get a hold of him.
The Democrats is the biggest.
Let you know when I do.
I think that the
Stand by.
The dilemma is.
Hold on, Dwight. Bring that up.
Both of them.
Dwight, hold on. Bring that on.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, Thursday, October 5th, 2023. I am coming to you from the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, WCPT 820 in Chicago, but AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Got to give you a special shout out today, not only because you're my home in Minneapolis, St. Paul, but because the Twins, for the first time in 21 years, they are in the postseason. They are in the running to get into the World Series. Wow. Must first secure the league championship, but this is big news. Congratulations to the Minnesota Twins. I'm Santita Jackson. We're talking about the race for the speakership. Who is going to get it? What is on the line? Ukraine is on the line. What are the issues that will be propelling the new speaker? Will it be Steve Scalise? Will it be Jim Jordan? Will it be a compromise candidate, the president pro tem of the Senate? Excuse me, of the House right now. You tell me what your thoughts are. Call us at 773-763-9278. Do you think that the Republicans are going to continue to hold the line on Ukraine? Will that drive the speakership? And will that begin to change the discussion about Ukraine in the United States? It's already changed with the American people more and more and more. Now a plurality moving toward a majority don't want to fund the war anymore. So what are your thoughts? I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Many Americans are saying, I need some relief at home. We are struggling right here. So I want to know what your thoughts are, because you do have to make a choice. Well, thank you, Michelle. You said, hey, Tupac put it so well, we'll fund the war, but we can't feed the poor. And I just amended a little bit. We'll fund the war, but we won't feed the poor. But you can't do both. Dr. King told us that. And in fact, he was killed for saying it. And so what about that today? Call me at 773-763-WCPT. Meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. What's going to drive this speakership and what's going to drive the conversation going into 2024? Let's go to some of these headlines from the Washington Post. The race to become the next House Speaker has begun. Majority Leader Steve Scalise, Republican from Louisiana, and firebrand conservative Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio, announced bids yesterday to replace the ousted Speaker, Kevin McCarthy. House business is at a standstill ahead of another shutdown deadline on November 17th. Lawmakers may vote on a new Speaker as soon as Wednesday. The turmoil in Congress could impact aid for Ukraine. What's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Indeed, Matt Gaetz said, look, we've got to get Kevin McCarthy out of here because he cut a secret deal with President Biden to fund Ukraine, and that's not what we want to do. What are your thoughts? 773-763-9278. President Biden said yesterday that he's worried about a lapse in funding to Ukraine. A bill to keep the government open passed last week without any money for Ukraine. And Republicans and more Americans are calling for Democrats even to hold to that point. President Biden announced $9 billion more in student loan forgiveness. It affects 125,000 borrowers who are eligible for 3 existing federal relief programs, according to the president yesterday. It's his administration's latest debt relief action. As you know, the Supreme Court, vis-a-vis the banks, pushed against his student debt relief plan. Probably going to have to have a big march on that, everybody. Scientists have discovered how dozens of genes may contribute to autism. And we find this unfortunate statistic: 1 in 8 U.S. households saw a drop in income over the last month. And homes are unaffordable in 99% of U.S. counties. Wow, can you believe that, everybody? Can you believe that life expectancy is dropping in the United States because of chronic disease, not because of COVID, because of heart disease, because of breast cancer? So many preventable illnesses are killing Americans. What does that say about the state of American healthcare? And now food stamps are much more difficult to get. And in Chicago, we're going to have a high of 69 degrees. Showers, it's already showering, everybody. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, 63 degrees, partly cloudy. Again, congratulations to the Twins, shutting out the Blue Jays, securing that spot in the league championship for the first time in 21 years. The Diamondbacks 5, the Brewers 2, the Phillies 7, and the Marlins 1. Tonight, the Chicago Bears will be facing the Washington Commanders starting at 7:15. Have to wait until the weekend to see the WNBA finals, though. And those are the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Even though it looks like home ownership is bleak in the United States, you know what? There's some things that you can do that can get you a home today. And you need to call Team Hochberg so that you can make that happen. Call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. Number one, many of us need credit repair. We need to build credit. We need to rebuild our credit, or we need to start a credit line. Well, they have a secured credit card that will enable you to fix your credit or to build your credit, rebuild your credit. They will allow you to do that. Call them at 855 56David, 855-56David, or go to 56David.com so that you can find out about this credit card, not your debit card. Your debit card does nothing to impact your credit rating. So it's a waste of your time. You need a credit card so that you can go from the 500s to the 600s to the 700s, which will impact you being able to get a home and all kinds of bonuses and really things that will help you to live much more comfortably in this society. If you are a first-time home buyer, for example, if you've not owned a home in the past 3 years, you might have owned one 4 years ago, but if you've not owned a home in the past 3 years, Team Hochberg can help you. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have been disturbed by the declining numbers of first-time home buyers, and now we're seeing more and more Americans, most are saying, I cannot afford to buy a home. But Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac said, we're going to help you. Particularly in Chicago, if you have an income, the total income of your home, all of those who contribute to the income, those of you who have your names on the deed or on the lease, if that total falls below $105,700, then you might qualify for this program if you've not owned a home in the past 3 years. So call them at 855-56David, 855-56David. It might be your opportunity, but you won't know until you call them at 855-56David or go to 56david.com. But I also asked them about that credit card. That's why I think you need to call them too. All right, everybody, let's talk about this House race. Dwight McKee, you were breaking it down for us. You were saying that there are a lot of things at play here. We're looking at Ukraine. Ukraine is an issue in this speaker's race. And of course, we'll have Dr. Max Wolf on at the bottom of the hour because he is he wants in on this discussion as well, even as we talk about the economy. Do you think that the Republicans are going to hold the line? And you think that because of Ukraine and because of Jim Jordan's hardline stance on not funding Ukraine, you think that he has the inside track for the speakership? Please explain.
That's why I'm so befuddled about what them did. If, in fact, that McCarthy had a deal with Biden that he would support Ukraine, which is why they kicked him out, then why not? Why would the Democrats not save him and let him drown? If the reason that they was cutting him out was because he had committed to a deal with Ukraine, whereas the hardliners on the Republican side are not going to support Ukraine, which is why I think Jim Jordan has the inside track on that. He has two deliverables. One is Ukraine. He's already said he's not going to reinforce the funding on that. And secondly, he's leading a charge against Biden on the impeachment side. And so he has two trains on that track. So I think he may have the inside track on this. I think that part of it is Republicans are going to declare war. I think they declared war on each other because they're also insulted with how Trump is being treated. And that the dilemma you have on both sides is that each side believes that they are the biggest threat to democracy. The Democrats believe Republicans are the biggest threat to democracy. Republicans believe that the Democrats are the biggest threat to democracy. And they're both right.
How so?
That's the problem.
How are they both right?
Because what the Republicans are doing is they want to create a fascist government. They're going to if Trump wins again, they're going to decapitate the government and take over as much of it as they possibly can, so they will be in charge, and democracy will be a notion of the past. Once they finish restructuring the government, not unlike they're doing in Israel today. But on the Democratic side, what they're doing to Trump and trying to keep him from not being able to run, not being able to candidate, is also, in my opinion, very undemocratic. And it reeks of weaponizing the Justice Department. And I look at how they've structured this approach. It seems like it's tailor-made for one man. And the thing about justice is, the fundamental of justice is you cannot tailor justice for one case or one person, then it becomes it does not become democratic. It becomes oppressive. And I see the Democrats, and they see the Democrats doing that on that side.
So do you see the Democrats holding the line on this? Do you think that there's an understanding on either side of how deeply people feel and why, Dwight?
That's a tough question. I think that they're living in a bubble. I think that the Democrats don't really understand the net impact, emotional impact that the war and immigration is having on the average citizen. The average citizen, particularly many of the black citizens, see the war as a transference of their inheritance and their resources to another people that they don't understand why they have to be responsible for saving their lives when they themselves are drowning. And they see the immigration issue the same way. I was looking at some of the hearings they was having in Chicago the other day, and the people are extraordinarily upset and angry, saying we believe, justice and equality, and we want to share our resources, but we don't want to abdicate our resources to people who, have nothing in our understanding directly to do with us. And they see themselves being reduced to the bottom of the pile again. And it's a very emotional issue for them. So I think that the Democrats operate in a bubble, but I also think the Republicans operate in a bubble, and that they're committed to cutting back social programs and don't understand how essential these programs are for the average American now, black and white, because, now the middle class is almost as desperate as the poor have been. And the Republicans are living in a bubble on that. They don't understand that when he talk about cutting welfare, this ain't, cutting some colored people down in Mississippi. This is housewives in Connecticut are also going to suffer with this. And so I think both parties are living in a bubble.
Is it? Well, what are your thoughts, Attorney Daryl Jones?
I think that first, certainly I underscore and highlight everything that Dwight has just laid out, because he's 100% on point. But to really understand it, because I like, I'm one of those people, I like to break it down to its most common denominator. What does it mean to the person on the street? And I remember, Santita, a story that you were telling when you were in a grocery store and you're talking to the cashier, and as you were checking out, and the cashier said, I can't afford to buy the groceries that are in the store in which I work. To feed herself and to feed her family. I take that example and I ask you, what would that cashier say about the U.S. giving all these billions of dollars to Ukraine rather than trying to work with her so that she and her family could be able to afford the groceries in the store in which she works? So it's those basic domestic issues and those basic domestic philosophies and policy that I think is the great miss. And that's why I say that, what is the saying? A broken clock can be right twice a day. When it comes twice a day. So when it comes to Ukraine and what those that are the Republicans that want to stop the funding to the Ukraine, one of the things they're going to be lifting up is redirecting that money. That this is money that could be used for our own economy, for our own people. And one of the things that Dwight said yesterday when I was listening in was that he said, and today, what is the Democratic strategy? What is the strategy of the Democratic Party when it comes to the Speaker of the House? Because all of this is going to be intertwined with one another. And I haven't heard articulated the strategy. What I have heard articulated is, when your enemy or your opponent is imploding, don't jump in to save them. Let them implode. That's not a strategy. That's not what the voters are looking for. What we're looking for is a strategy to put in place to say, normalize this stuff. Show us what you're going to do that's going to be better. What is the solution? What is the speaker that you prefer? How are you going to get to that end? What are you doing to protect our interests while all of this is going on? That's the strategy that I think that Dwight was speaking of. At least that's my interpretation of the strategy that we're looking for. And I don't think it's been articulated to a point that, the cashier that's in that grocery store can appreciate it and make the connection.
The cashier and her son. And TJ said, wow, Dwight thinks attempting to keep an insurrectionist with 91 indictments from running again is undemocratic. Wow. Why don't you explain?
Let the voters decide. You can't make a decision. First is that is a subjective conclusion. It's not been proven in court yet. And so let the voters decide. That's the democratic way to do it, is to put all the evidence out there and say, okay, this is America. Everybody has a vote. The majority wins. Now you all decide who you want your president to be. And if you want your president to be a fascist insurrection leading kind of racist kind of guy, then this is America. That's your choice. As bad as it sounds, it is in the majority rule country, then they have the right to choose even the worst candidates. That's democracy. That's what democracy is, whether you agree with it or not. You can't make their choice or take their choice off the table because that's how you feel. And there are other Republicans who believe that Biden and his family are crooks. But if the Republicans decided that he don't have the right to run again, we would be as offended by that. That's how democracy plays itself out. Let them play it out in the public square. Fight it out in the public square. Democracy is not what you think it is.
So what is the pushback on that? Because it seems that Democrats now don't want to see that happen. Why do you think that is, Dwight?
I don't understand the question.
My question is, Democrats are saying, pull him out the race. Whatever we need to do, we cannot have him running. Boom. That's what Rachel Maddow said. Look, if you would just agree not to run, she said the quiet part out loud. We can make all this stuff, all these charges against you, poof, go away. That's an oversimplification, but that was the heart of what she said. And that's the heart of what a lot of people are saying.
Well, my opinion is the fear is that he's going to win. They wouldn't be operating the way if he wasn't a legitimate threat and he's leading the poll. So I think the fear is that if they don't stop him from running and he does run, he's going to win. Because the fear of Biden is that, for Biden, is that if he does run and is a legitimate opposition, Biden, for whatever reason, don't have the opposition to stop him. And so they want Biden to be able to run against somebody he can win against. That's my opinion. Daryl, you may see a little differently. How do you see it?
I've got 2 minutes, Daryl.
And I do see it a little differently. I come from the concept that, no man is above the law. And even if you try to use the political side of saying, and it happens quite a bit, right, with elected officials that get in trouble, trade off your position to get out of trouble. And I don't see that happening in this for former President Trump, particularly in Georgia. You'd have to convince Fani Willis to drop her case because they have no control over her. I think it's important right now that you stand your ground, that if you're going to say no man is above the law, this is the time to show it. This is the time to show it. What we just saw happen in New York, on the civil side of that, it's continuing to show the correctness of the position of what the former president is made of and what he's all about. I think you do much more damage right now if you try to negotiate, say, oh, well, you don't run, it all goes away from the state level and the federal level. You really then go into the integrity of the entire system and what it's all about. So, do I think we can stop him from running? I think the Constitution personally stops him from running for president. But, we've got to be certain that we hold to our principle that no man is above the law. Let these cases work their way out. And, let the people decide. The people on the jury, let them decide. That's the way that I see it.
Well, I believe let him lose the election and then lock him up. Let him lose the election and then put him in prison.
Okay.
Coming up, Dr. Max Wolf on the Santita Jackson Show. Want to hear your thoughts? Call us at 773-763-9277. 773-763-WCPT. Will Ukraine continue to be funded? Will that continue to be funded? Or will we shut down the government trying to make that happen? What's going to happen, everybody? Call us at 773-763-9278. And what do you think is going to happen with this speakership anyway? Remember, there are three branches of government. One of the branches is headless right now. The line of succession for the presidency is absent a person. That is dangerous, really. Our pastor, Reverend Clay Evans Dwight McKee, taught us that a two-headed thing is a freak. But if you're headless, you're a monster. Think about that. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Well, I think they're going to continue to push, you guys. I think these people, they, instead of pulling back, they are pushing forward, Daryl, and Dwight. And they are pushing forward on Ukraine. They are not playing. And, I think the piece that people are not discussing is, I will say this, the people on the right are very organized. They're very organized and they are very disciplined and they will call their representatives. Daryl, you know that. Dwight, they do that. They are very, very active. They send the emails. They do all of that. I remember when Andrew Young was forced to resign from the United Nations. Do you remember that? Daryl, are you old enough to remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just asking. I mean, not a big deal. My father was one of the few people who stood up for him to keep his job. Now, the other story is that my mother was, after I'd gone to Cuba and met Castro and Yasser Arafat and all these people, I came back very enthusiastic about my parents getting involved in that struggle. And they had been invited over to the Middle East many times. But,
back in 2 minutes. Also, we have Dr. Wolf and Mr. Muhammad ready to go.
Oh, okay. And let me give you all greetings, but I'll wrap up the story very quickly. So, my mother flew after going to Lebanon herself, she flew to New York to see Andrew Young. And she said, if Dr. King were alive, he would take a stand on this issue. You've got to have Israeli security, but you've got to have Palestinian justice. Having a no-talk policy with the Palestinians is ridiculous. And what I saw over there was just awful. They're getting slaughtered. And he said, Jackie, if I touch this is the third rail of American politics. Well, anyway, he did go meet with these guys. And boy, oh boy, he was condemned roundly. And when my father went to see President Carter about it, he said, I would have loved to have kept Andy. He said, but you know what, Reverend? Look at all of these telegrams at that time that I've gotten in support of getting him out. If Black people had responded with just a portion of this, I would have been able to justify it. But I couldn't. He said, yours was the most prominent voice out here. He said the other Black leaders were silent. So I had to let him go. He said, it broke my heart to do it. He was a great ambassador at the UN. Y'all, you got to get active. And let me just say hello to you, Dr. Wolf, sending you much love this morning.
Good morning.
And, of course, Mandine Muhammad And so let me go to you, Mandine. I'm going to come to you and give you a couple of minutes because it was wonderful doing your show last night. Thank you so much for that opportunity, Mandine. And thank you for fitting us in between your no, we're about to come
Back
on
in
the
60.
air. Thank you for fitting me in between your workout schedule in the morning. Hello.
Yeah, we can thank Brother Aaron Muhammad. He's allowing me to do this from Top Notch Training. But it was an honor having you on last night. It was a long time coming, and we really appreciated your experience. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity because the Jackson name is synonymous with freedom fighting and politics. But they see you, but I don't really think they really knew your background and your story. So it was just an honor to be able to have you come on and talk about just how deep intellectually and experience-wise Santita Jackson is.
Well, we had a wonderful, wonderful time. Stand by. We're about to come up. And
okay.
And
I thought we were on.
Oh no, sweetie, no. But because remember, I want you to let people know how they can watch, your show live and how where it's played and how they can look at all these
Stand
wonderful
by.
shows. You're about to have Shahrazad Ali. I've got to get in touch with
We
you.
can change
Stand
the
by.
world, change the world, change the world. Oh, yes, we can. We can change the world. We can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Talking to you about the speakership. Who's going to become the new Speaker of the House, and what are the issues that will propel them into the seat? What's going to happen with funding to Ukraine? What's going to happen to the WIC program, the SNAP program? These programs, will Republicans then be given license to cut these programs of which people are in desperate need? Call us at 773-763-9278. Floria, I'm going to come to you in a hot second. But you know what? Last night, Dr. Wolf, of course, he is on every Thursday at this time. Before I pivot to you, Dr. Wolf, of course, Dwight McKee and Attorney Darrell Jones are still here with me. I have got a man for whom I have tremendous admiration, a tremendous storyteller and journalist. And I've met him so many years ago through Brother Munir Muhammad, who made his transition, but he is just one of our angels now. And indeed, we have been watching his show here in Chicago for years. One of the most prominent members of the Muslim community. And I'm so glad that you, Mandine Muhammad, have picked up the mantle and you have gone forward and you are having tremendous conversations with everybody. Boy, but what an internship you had with Brother Munir Muhammad. Bless your heart.
Yeah.
Thank you for welcoming me onto your show last night.
Thank you for accepting the invitation, Ms. Jackson. It was, we just continued on what was taught to us. We have fine examples, and Brother Munir and a student of I did messenger to Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and of course, Brother Munir spent a lot of time with Brother Farrakhan as well. So, when even in the same room as great giants like that, you can't help but to learn if you actually pay attention. So, having you on the show last night was just an extra feather in our cap because it's been a long time coming. You have a wealth of experience and knowledge, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to come on and just talk about who really Santita Jackson is, because you're not, as they say, just not another pretty face, that's living off the name of her father and mother. You got some pedigree yourself, and and if they pay attention to what you say, they could actually learn something.
Oh, bless your heart. Well, the name of your show and how can we see it? Because I think you're about to have a conversation with Shahrazad Ali. Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
But you've talked
Yes,
to
ma'am.
everybody. When you go into the studio,
That's a tradition, then.
it's a museum. I love it.
Yeah, it's the archives for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Ironically enough, this Saturday, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad often said he never really knew when he was born, but we just stayed on October the 7th.
Uh-huh.
And so October the 7th, we will be acknowledging him with several things that's going on, including a film showing that will be held at 2 o'clock this Saturday at Crow 2435 West 71st Street. We do have this Sister Shahrazad Ali on this Sunday at 2:30. on the Munir Muhammad show. He spoke of the Munir Muhammad show. We've been doing the show close to 30 years now, and the show itself comes on Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on Channel 25 in Chicago. But for those that are not in Chicago, you can see it because we do stream live every Wednesday at 2:30. I'm sorry, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. I'm sorry. And those shows are always on our YouTube channel, so you can always go back and check us out.
And what is the YouTube channel?
The YouTube channel is Crow TV.
CROE TV. And this is a tremendous,
so
tremendous facility right in the heart of the Black community. And when you go in, you know, I brought in a young woman who has been my regular Uber driver. I said, I really want you to see this. She said, okay. She was so excited and so impressed. She said, it's hard to believe that this jewel is right in the middle of our community, giving us all of this information. And I was so honored to be with you last night. And you're such a fine gentleman, such a fine gentleman. I choose my words very, very carefully. You're a wonderful gentleman.
Let me say this before you let me go. Just for you bringing that young lady in, you may have she may be just the Uber driver / chef, but she not only was she appreciative, but the way that's what we've been taught, to bring people along.
Mm-hmm.
You know, things are done for us. You know, we're bestowed, you know, great things. With great things come great responsibilities. And you're just continuing that on. It's, like you say, you're not selfish in this work. You want to pass it on. We get truth. We want to pass it on. We can't keep it to self. You know, it's almost like being constipated for so long and then you just have to release it. You try to give that type of analogy early in the morning, but you understand what I'm saying. You can't hold on to this truth. You'll burst.
Well, and it'll make you sick. You know, you have to let things go. You really, really do. And she was very excited. I was very excited. I've been watching the show for decades. Even when I lived in New York, I couldn't wait to come home and see it because, you know, the most faithful viewer you have is my mother, of course.
That's right.
She doesn't miss an
we
episode.
appreciate your mom. She acknowledges every time I see her that she watches the show all the time. And as I told you, if nobody else watches our show, I know she does.
No, but you have quite an audience. And how can we view it on television and online?
Again, the Munir Muhammad show comes on Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on Channel 25, the Chicago station. And we do stream live. Our regular time is Wednesday at 6 p.m. Just go to Crow.org, and click on that Crow Media link, or you can see us every Sunday afternoon at 2:30.
Okay, one more time. I'm sorry. Your YouTube channel is what? Because you went out.
The YouTube channel is Crow TV, CROE TV.
Okay.
And it's the same on the Facebook page as well, CROE TV. So, and I really thank you for allowing me these couple of minutes. You know, people were killed to be on Johnny Carson, one of those late night shows for 2 or 3 minutes. I deem this the same. So I really appreciate it. And I admire the work that you do, my dear sister.
I admire the work that you do, my dear brother. And thank you for honoring me with the space and place on your show. I really, really tease you a lot, but I loved it.
One last thing, I got to give a shout out to my trainer for allowing me to stop. This is an extended break I'm getting right now. So shout out to Brother Aaron Muhammad from Top Notch Training for allowing me to do this.
Give him my love. I got to get with him myself. I'm sending you.
He's the best.
Absolutely. Sending you so much love, everybody. Mandine Muhammad of the Munir Muhammad.
He sends you the greetings. And Brother Aaron sends you the greetings.
Absolutely. But he'll hear from me through you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Love you much. God bless.
Love you. Have a good day.
God bless you. And of course, they will be celebrating the birthday of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad on Saturday at the Crow Studio on West 71st Street. And we will be celebrating Reverend Jackson's birthday. The actual birthday of my father is October 8th, but on Saturday at 930 East 50th Street. I hope you'll meet us over there. And we're going to have a great old celebration for Reverend Jesse Jackson. You know what? You wanted to be part of this discussion. Dr. Max Wolf, you know, you talk about economics, but please, as my brother, Congressman Jonathan Jackson said, he said his throwaway thoughts are just so brilliant. You just want to sit him in a corner and just listen to him all day. What do you make of this fight for the speakership? Where do you see it going? Are you surprised that Kevin McCarthy was ejected from his seat?
I mean, look, some of these things are hard to be surprised by, but hard to believe at the same time. I think that might be a reasonable description of Congress these days. Hard to be surprised by and hard to believe at the same time. I do think, and I'm going to use this phrase because I like it from your previous guest, there are a lot of people with that truth constipation that he was mentioning running around the hallowed halls of our leadership here. And unfortunately, they're releasing right onto the general public in a sort of volcanic manner here. Look, I think that when you see someone go, there's always a lesson learned of what happened there. And this looks like it was a somewhat tenuous speakership, kind of started with the 15 votes and such. So there was a pretty strong indication for a while now that this is going to be a difficult ride, and that if you have a protest movement that actually finds itself without much training or preparation in Congress, which is actually a difficult professional job that has historically required training, and people come up through the system, and many of them have the background that you get from being executives of some type or administrators of some type or lawyers of some type to kind of help them with it, that we've so denigrated the work of government and public sector that we now have begun to produce a class of people who are creatures of that disrespect. And they disrespect the job they're given, they disrespect each other, and they disrespect their constituents one way or another. One great sort of common theme here is just attacking authority all the time. And if you do that, it does blow off some of that anger. Much of it may be justified, but it quickly leads to a dysfunctional body. But I think, unfortunately, we've been engaged for some time here now in which we have the folks whose hands are on the levers of power making a great sort of alligator tears of protesting their own decisions. And it has kind of become the theater of the absurd. Right? So the Republican Party that gets a lot fewer votes all the time is constantly on the lookout for, jurisprudential overstep while legislating stuff that 12% of America believes and 80% of the country opposes. And then they're constantly fighting each other for who's purest in an ever-changing set of standards, right? And I also think the other problem is we live in a Citizens United world where all over the floor of the U.S. Congress, and this is not just a Republican thing, all over the floor of the U.S. Congress are people who are bought and paid for by someone, and they're answerable to that person, not the constituency. So it becomes very hard, where people who are kind of legislating to make theater to get on television and the news, and people who are pleasing a few or a single constituent in some cases, and people who are mostly out for their own career. I do think it was a little bit disappointing to see that when Representative Gates was instrumental in the sort of overthrow of the speakership, his first impulse wasn't to show who he thought should lead, because there was really no one on that list. His first impulse was to make sure to get all the television coverage he could possibly get. There's a certain wisdom to it. I guess it works. I mean, there were a lot of reasons to think he wouldn't still be in Congress now, and he is. So he knows that game better than I do. But it makes a mockery of the sense that we send these people to Washington to represent our interests. And we have so many people turned off to our political system that these kind of things can make things worse because they make people kind of throw their hands up and disengage.
I'm wondering. I think that some people are disengaged and some people are more engaged than ever before. Let me bring in a couple of callers. I just understand that you, Dr. Uri, just called in. But let me get in Floria because she's been holding on for a minute. Floria, what's on your mind? Is Floria still there? Okay. Floria, you can call back. Let me go to Paul. Paul, what's on your mind today?
I'm here.
Oh, Floria. Hey, Floria. What's on your mind? How are you?
Good morning, Santita. This is Flora Williams.
Okay.
And I've been listening to you for a while. I think you must have spelled my name wrong.
Okay.
But
Yes. Because I wondered. I said, maybe it's Miss Flora. I don't know. How you doing?
Yes, I'm good. I enjoy your panel always.
Thank you.
And I just want to say I agree totally with your panel today. And I just think this show should be on TV as well. The shutdown of the government should never be a bargaining chip. Why don't Biden do some executive orders to stop this from occurring? We are vulnerable to other countries. American tax dollars are being spent on everyone but themselves, but ourselves. So basic needs are what Americans want to feel first. 2 to 3 incomes. We have 2 to 3 incomes to survive in America, and that's unacceptable. I don't think Scalise or Jordan will be good for the country. Hakeem Jeffries might be the best, but he's not probably going to get in there. The GOP knew that they were going to challenge McCarthy because he's not from the South. And there is a move in the South, state and local, to get back to some of these strategies that was mentioned by some of your speakers earlier. The GOP got him to put a removal of speaker in place before they would vote him in. There's an unspoken rule in the South about who should have a right to speak openly in public places. Those who have lived in the South for many generations, that looks like me, and poor whites, seem to know how far they should push. Now, the church teaches obedience is better than sacrifice, but I don't agree with how they manipulate that person. Biden has given directives for the wall, so that will be the bargaining tool. Ukraine can be funded. The negotiations are taking place behind closed doors, I believe. This is my opinion. The autocrat is how the South runs their state and local government. I don't support funding Ukraine. This is personal, in my opinion, for Biden, because he's probably owe Ukraine for the money his son got for consulting, and they probably cut a deal behind our back.
So you see this as a deal. So when you hear about the Hunter Biden, when you hear about the hearings, not just about Hunter Biden, but really about their family and their business dealings and their possible connections. So those hearings have merit for you.
They have merit for me and many people that I have spoken to.
Really?
Many of them. Yes, they have merit. People believe that something took place.
Miss Flora, I'm only asking you this. Stay right there, and Dr. Wolf and Attorney Jones, Dwight McKee, and Reverend Dr. Geary. It's very interesting, and I'm gonna. Paul is gonna. After I finish with you, Miss Flora, I'm gonna ask Paul to weigh in, because the corporate media have just made this a Republican thing, and I said, I don't know if that's true. I think a lot of people have a lot of questions. What say you? Is it just a Republican thing, or you're saying that a lot of people are talking about this? Really?
They're talking about it because what they feel is, even though they believe something took place with Ukraine, the alternative is worse. Just like the alternative for McCarthy is worse. Now, most people want to keep Joe in there because the people I know, they don't want another Trump because they know he's an autocrat. And even though he may not get in there, it seems like there's something shady going on within our political system to allow him to even put his name forward. Now, we got felons all over. They don't get their names. They even got their votes taken away. So people are not really understanding what's taking place in the government. They don't have access to people in their state and local level to really tell them the truth. And then their local and state levels probably don't know the truth. They don't know what's going on. You're depending on the people that you send to represent you for an understanding. We have town hall meetings I don't know about anywhere else. We do have town hall meetings in the area that I live in, Virginia, and they have them all over Virginia. I don't know what other people are doing, but when they speak, they use talking points. They only talk about what the Democratic Party is allowing them to put out. So when everybody's talking the same talking points, no one really believes them because everybody cannot be saying the same thing. Now, there's a young man running named Darius Clark. He's a Democrat, and he stepped out from other local leaders by saying that Virginia has always been racist. And so they backfired, and they said that he was dividing the city, and the state, that he was not going to be a good choice because of his division. He's not dividing. He's calling it just what it is. And that hidden rules that I don't really notice until someone told me that it was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from the Chicago area. When I came here with my head up and ready to take on whatever I needed to take on. And I still feel that way. Even though I'm older, I still feel that way. I'm not going to bow my head down because you walk into the room.
Well, Miss Flora, stay right there because I only have a few more minutes left in this segment, but stay here because I want you to talk to the panel. I want them to respond to you. But let me bring on Paul. Paul, I didn't want to miss your comment before we went off the air. Paul, what's on your mind, sweetie?
Oh, yeah. Good morning.
Good morning.
I was thinking about what, sure, thanks. Professor Wolf is saying that with no plan to eject the speaker reminded me of the notion that, revolutions in general don't work out very well. We like to cite a few that have, but most of the time they don't. They either lead to something much worse or the revolution, the intent snaps back much the other way. And I was thinking about this, that with such a razor-thin margin in the House, it wouldn't take more than Kevin McCarthy and 3 others to defect to the other side. And if I were Kevin McCarthy, just from the humiliation alone, I think I would say I'm sitting on the other side of the aisle with the Democrats, and there are Republicans in the House who won in districts that Joe Biden also won. And I don't think those Republicans are would be in much danger if they did the same thing. And it only takes 3. They have a 4-vote majority. So Kevin McCarthy and 3 others to defect would be the end of the Republican majority. And this is what they don't understand, and what Nancy Pelosi very much did. When you have this kind of razor-thin margins in the House, you have to play in the middle of the field. You can't say, no, we're going to play on your end or on my end. You have to play in the middle, and you have to negotiate. And the one thing that the Republicans in the House do not understand is that Congress speaks with one voice, and that includes the Senate. So in order to, instead of worrying about how he's going to put the pressure on Joe Biden, the Republicans need to be talking about what they can get past Chuck Schumer. And this is what they don't understand, is that this is exactly the way the Congress was designed, so that it doesn't matter that we have a bicameral Congress, and the fact that one house is dominated slightly by Republicans and the other one slightly by the Democrats doesn't mean that Congress doesn't speak with one voice, and one of those bodies can hold the other hostage. That's just not the way it works. Congress must speak with one voice. And frankly, the President Biden has shown the masterfulness of Lyndon Johnson in being able to get through legislation with these slim majorities when the House also was in the Democratic control last session with Nancy Pelosi, only by the same number of votes that Republicans have now. That is what's called it's not called being loopy and being old. It's called knowing the legislative process. And that is one of the things that the great mastery of Lyndon Johnson had.
Well, you know what? I've got about a minute and a half. Dr. Wolf, why don't you respond to what you've heard from Miss Flora and from Paul?
Sure. So I think they have sort of slightly different takes on the situation, both of which are interesting to me. I think it is the age of false equivalence. We have to put Biden on trial because the former president is a serial criminal, and he's got 400 trials, of which he has a hard time not confessing things during press conferences, right? So the other guy has to be a criminal too. And the truth is there's plenty of corruption to go around, right? But of the things I could maybe put some of the fears to rest on right away, folks who are up all night worried about how generous we are with other countries should go ahead and sleep free. There's no worries there. We don't have friends. We have interests, and we pursue them, right? And so don't worry that we're doing so much for anyone else. That's the last thing I'd be up worried about. Should we do more for our own people? You bet. And fighting about what we're doing for other people under the false guise that it's generous is probably a good way to distract them, as are the picadillos and minor offenses of this or that party, right? The bottom line is this is not about the individuals, but the Republican Party does have a little bit of a, cult of personality issue now, not minor. And so they kind of imagine when attacking the Democratic Party that the Democratic Party has the same cult of personality. While there's plenty wrong with the Democrats, I don't think the excitement around Biden is such that you could call it a cult of personality, right? But if you assume that, because that's what you do, you attack for that. I think we're trying to decide whether or not to have a functioning government on which all of us are dependent right now. I don't think that's necessarily Democratic or Republican. We're kind of deciding how fast we destroy what we built. And I think it's pretty disrespectful to the blood, the sweat, and the tears that built the opportunities we do have, not to respect the system that administers them, however broken, however imperfect. So I think this is an existential moment for America here. And I think it's important to put that first because there is no tomorrow until you get through today.
Everybody stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Reverend Dr. Todd Geary is going to weigh in. I wish we could have gotten you earlier, Reverend Dr. Geary, but I want to get some closing thoughts from everybody here. Miss Flora, I hope you're still there. Paul, I hope you're still there. Let's just have a quick discussion about all that we've talked about. God bless you, everybody. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow, Lord willing, on the Santita Jackson Show. Make it a great day. God bless. Newport 348 says, I'm in Chicago and I'm not living comfortably. More and more Americans are saying that. A CBS News report shows from, I think, the ATTOM Foundation that Americans in 99% of the counties of the United States cannot afford to buy a home. That is not good news. 1 in 8 Americans saw a drop in income last month. That is not good news. We have a lot of stuff, a lot of things to which we must attend, Dr. Wolf. I mean, I've got some other people who want to weigh in, but before you go, just, Americans are just feel beleaguered. And when you see tens of billions of dollars going out other places, when you see other people being brought into the United States and they're being taken care of while Americans are suffering, that
we
rankles.
Don't say, I mean, I understand it makes people feel bad, but the federal government of the United States spends $5 trillion a year, almost none of it on international aid, like an almost criminally low amount, and almost nothing for refugees. So, like, you can begrudge the other poor guy his saltine, or you can try to figure out what happened to the dinner, right? And, like, that's always going to be understandable, but a distraction. If you added up all the money we spent on Ukraine or all the money we spent on migrants, first of all, most of that money is being spent on American businesses. It's not being sent there, right? And it's often pretty meager, right? So we're often letting these people into our lavish homeless shelters and prisons, not where everyone I know is trying to hang out, even if times aren't great. So I'm not sure we should be that comfortable that we're lavishing these large amounts of money on them. If you look at what we actually spend on, these things don't even rank. They're not on the first or second or third page of expenditure by size, right? So I understand it sort of codifies, but I would say one thing. Talking about foreign aid, talking about migrants, talking about poor people is something we've done for 40 years while we haven't talked about where the money really goes, and that's how we got here. That's not how we get out of here.
Where does the money really go?
It's just not.
Where does it go?
We know where the money. Well, we know that 20% of our entire GDP goes to a medical system that leaves tens of millions of us uninsured and bankrupts others of us when we go to the doctor. That's 1,000 times more important than 5 Ukrainians and every migrant we've ever considered coming in here for a bologna sandwich and a chance to sleep on the gym floor or whatever other red carpet we've rolled out for these folks, right? I mean, it just kind of matters. We have $1 trillion military spending. We're going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars servicing the national debt because instead of taxing wealthy Americans and corporations, we borrow for them and then we pay them back with interest. These conversations, I think, might be interesting. right? I think they might be more interesting than the sort of Ukraine. And I think the Ukraine conversation is now tainted by the fact that we see extensive evidence that foreign governments with their own interests have found ways to pollute and buy off our Congress people. And so you've got people voting for foreign adventures because they're paid to do it, and people voting against foreign adventures because they're paid to do it. And by the way, those are both actions that would fall under the treason provisions in the country. So I think that's a problem for sure. I just think of all the things to worry about, and there are many, and all the perspectives are valid. Our generosity to foreigners and migrants and refugees does not rank. It's a little bit like when you get these guys coming up there and they're saying, hey, the problem with the American social welfare is I can find you a lady who got a free piece of cheese. Right? Like, okay, totally irrelevant, not interesting. I might push some emotional button for people, and I can understand that. But from a sort of factual numbers basis economics discussion, I mean, no, it just doesn't rank, right? It's not, if you think that's important, you're not thinking the way we're trained to think in economics.
Well, we don't have the information. Dwight McKee, why don't you respond to what you just heard before I pivot to Reverend Dr. Yeary?
Well, I think that's an Ivy League analysis. An Ivy Tower analysis. I think the people on the ground don't see it that way at all. All they understand is I'm hungry and my money is going somewhere else. And so the academic economist side may be absolutely correct, but the average person is not academically trained and is not Harvard trained. The average person, at least that I've seen, they just kind of very basic, very elementary. And what they see every week, every day is they look at that gas pump and say, my gas is $5 a gallon. I can't afford it. They look at daycare and say, I can't afford to keep my child in daycare. They look at the food bill and say chicken is up, 150%. And they say, where is the money? And then they look and they say, oh, in my mind, I don't know about the microeconomics, but what I see is that I'm paying these bills, and every day, every week, they say to me, we want to spend another $10 billion overseas. Or they look up and see, like in Chicago yesterday, 30 bus loads of people coming from another country saying, find us a place to stay and feed us and then give us some of your jobs. And so they don't understand the Ivy Tower analysis. They just know what they know and see what they see.
I agree.
Is Ms. Flora, is that you?
Yes, I agree totally with Dr. Dwight. The average person are not looking at the intellectual scheme of things. Democrats deal with the average person intellectually, in which when you're hungry, like Dr. Dwight said, when you go to the gas pump and your mortgage keeps going up, everything else is put on the back burner. They cannot listen. You have to. I'm a former teacher. You have to meet people where they are. And if you cannot meet people where they are, and you think that they're listening when they're hungry, they're not. You can't make people listen when they're hungry. You just can't do it. So intellectual as some people may be, I can see the big picture. I do know that the Congress people are being sponsored by different corporate leaders. I do know that foreign countries have gotten in and sponsored who they want in the White House, and they give them big money. What are we going to do about this money that comes in? Is there going to be some type of bill to stop the money from coming in so that everybody can be on an even playing field, so that I can run if I wanted to? I made a joke about it, that I can be the Speaker of the House. I have common sense, so I know how to do better than they are. because I'm not going in, and you're not going in with a personal agenda. We understand the personal agenda that these Congress people have. We understand the personal agendas that are in our cities. I live across from a pipeline that was built, and we lived with the construction of it for a few years. It shook our house, tore up everything. So I also live in a toxic city with the steel mills. I'm from East Chicago, Indiana. So I have seen all of this before. And it's one of the corrupt political systems of my day. So I know corruption. I know daily in Chicago, because that's where we got our news. So politically, I'm astute. Intellectually, I'm astute. But for the common person, and I'm that common person as well, I want my mortgage lowered. I want my gas bills lowered. I want my utilities lowered. Now, they may not be giving much money to Ukraine or other countries on a larger scale. They may not. And the percentage, I understand, is very low. It's about 2 to 3%, to my understanding. But any penny for people who are hungry, that's like me taking my money, and I know my family needs to eat, and I go and buy a new dress. And I know they need to eat, but I just bought me a bag that cost $2,000. So I understand, I think it was Dr. Wolf, I understand his intellectual stance on it. And it will work well when people are able to get back to normal, some sort of normalcy. So I say hold off on it. I say also that we find a way to stop the big money from other countries and supporting these Congress people who are not really qualified or may not be, they've been there too long, some of them. They are qualified. Many of them are qualified. Gates is young, but I think he's qualified. He's just a rich fool. And he's very spoiled. Somebody is pulling his chain.
Well, you know what?
Everybody.
If I may say this, Miss Flora, number one, money is the mother's milk of politics. If we had a publicly funded system and took the money out of it, number one, you need to pay all representatives at every level much, much more than you're paying them. Because particularly people who have to live between two cities. Just it's unaffordable. And this is not to be greedy. You ask a whole lot of public officials, so pay them. And then that's that. Publicly fund these campaigns so you don't have to be prey to corporations. And then let's go.
Absolutely. Yeah. Close it down. Shut down that part of it and just publicly fund them.
Publicly fund them, and also disincentivize any bribery. It should be a very highly paid position. Take that out. I mean, please.
Prestigious. Prestigious too, because for people of color and women in the United States, public sector employment has been the most reliable professional path. Now, that doesn't mean we should give up on creating fair opportunity in the private sector. It's not what I'm saying, right? But part of the dragging down and the defunding of the public sector makes people poorer. So I respect that there's different perspectives, different levels of removal. But to be a little bit provocative here, you're poor because you didn't ask these questions before, too. It's not just that you're poor, right? It's you're poor because these questions weren't asked. Because if you gave every penny that's gone to Ukraine into the public social safety net, it wouldn't matter because it isn't a small percentage. It's 2 decimal points percentage. It's 0.00 something, right? So at that point, why is 0.00 something % of the money what you think about? because someone put that on the menu for you to what to be concerned about. Just when they took off from the menu $1 trillion in general defense spending, right? Or $400 billion in the same period we spent $20 billion on Ukraine on medical care, right? Without giving basic care to people, right? So someone took off the discussion why we have the same minimum wage as Slovakia, which no one can earn a living if they earn. That's not on the message. How we cut all the affordable housing funding, right? What someone put on there is fight for cheaper gas prices and food prices. And I'm not being disrespectful. I know that's important. That's how you get through the day. But that's part of an effort to teach you that you're a consumer, not a worker. Because otherwise you'd say, hey, I want to earn more. That's dangerous. I want cheaper stuff. Okay, we can work with that. Your boss wants cheaper eggs too, unless he's in the egg business, right? So like that's easier to work with, right? So I get what you're saying, but you know, sometimes, and not all the time, and not always, they're both important to how you got where you are.
Reverend Dr.
But the
Yeary?
direct funding, let me respond real quickly to that. But the direct funding is just part of the story. I mean, if that $20 billion is only part of the story, the rest of the story is the 60% of the budget that you have that's dedicated to the military industrial complex, the 500 bases you have around the world that people are funding at the percentage of, 2 out of every $3 pretty much that goes to support that. And so I think when people see Ukraine, they see the micro, but there's a macro to that micro that people are affected by. They ain't quite figured out yet, but they just kind of know it always going away from them somewhere for reasons they don't quite understand and can't quite process. Yuri, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take your time.
Dr. Yuri?
Good morning to all of you playing a lawyer, not yet on TV, but doing a couple of things this morning. It's been fascinating to listen to the conversation. I think I got in right at the beginning of Dr. Wolf's conversation. I'm gonna frame 2 words. I hope they don't come across offensively. But one is enemas, the other is audits. When you have a truth constipation issue, in the house I grew up in, Grandma always had an enema close by. We are kind of backed up, and where we're backed up is really in this conversation about how politics works. There are 2 competing interests. On one hand, you've got oversized and outsized corporate influence, because when between 1/5 and 1/6 of GDP, as Dr. Wolf noted, goes into keeping folks sick so that pharmaceuticals and healthcare can make profit, then there is already dysfunction built in at the expense of the masses. When at the same time the report comes out from the government that says poverty has expanded tremendously since there was a cutoff of the expanded child tax credit and the monthly payments to kind of help folks make ends meet during the period of COVID and the immediate aftermath, now you've got inflation added to it. Just in terms of practical assessment, my reality is tighter, and I don't get more time to go out and get another underpaying full-time job because I have other basic day-to-day obligations to family, to my own health, got to get some sleep, don't forget about that. And so in this process, when we start looking at it, because the media has framed Ukraine as this ultimate consequential outcome for which there ought to be significant budgetary investment off the balance sheet, we go back as often as is necessary because somehow there's some political interest that affects folks, and the folks on the street back in the community where my church is situated, where the median income in the neighborhood is under $18,000 a year. First of all, they can't tell you where Ukraine is. They're not looking for it on a map. All they trying to do is figure out, why am I sitting in the middle of this food desert? I don't have enough money to get where I need to go. Transportation doesn't get me there quickly. If I want to take a job in East Baltimore, but I'm leaving West Baltimore, I got to spend 2 hours on a bus with transfers in the morning to be able to get to the job on time, and then reverse it in the afternoon. And I got to get the kids off to school, be there when they get home from school, help them with homework before I do it all over again. There's this practical reality about how things work for the masses. But when you think about who is driving the influence, this whole notion about what happened when you're talking about who's going to be the speaker, you can't do any business in the House without the speaker. I don't think that's a problem, number one. And all of your spending bills are initiated in the House. So now what you have is any authority to be able to do something that affects the flow of public dollars. It's on pause while we try to figure out who's going to be next to sit in the hot seat with the approval of the audience of one. Matt Gaetz's whole shenanigans, though he says it may have been principled, was to really just kind of appeal to the one guy who really mattered. He didn't care what anybody else thought. He doesn't care if he gets put out of the Republican caucus. It doesn't matter to him whether or not folks are going to, get on. He does. I think Big Brother Dwight is right. He likes the attention. But the attention he's getting is the attention of one. He cares not about the wrath of everybody else. And so in this process, when we're looking at who's going to get in the seat, the real question is, when you look at the pettiness of the politics, you putting folks out of office in your first role as Speaker Pro Tem, now you got to go back and figure out how we're going to get back to the regular order of business that affects the day-to-day realities of regular folks. That's where I think the caution has to be, because here's the thing. All 435 members of the U.S. House on the ballot next year, every single one of them. And if we don't make up in our mind who's making the menu, not just what's on it, who's preparing, if we don't figure out who we need to prepare a menu that at least suits our appetite and our needs, we're going to continue to find ourselves fighting over the crumbs that are falling from the master's table. This is not and Sister Flora is exactly right. You can't talk to me about concept when I'm struggling with reality. That's the book, right? The disciples try to send the 5,000 men, not counting women and children, send them away at dinner time. And Jesus says, no, sit them down and you feed them. We've not prioritized taking care of the immediate needs of just human survival and human dignity. So in this flow of this conversation, when we get caught up in this madness, that's on one side. On the other side, the corporations who have GDP interests, they have a pathway to spend unlimited, unregulated amounts of money going around having to give it directly to candidates. They can spend it on behalf of information campaigns, buying media spots, sending out messages on folks' behalf that speak to issues. This whole thing is, as Brother Dwight will often say, it's a shell game. We playing 3-card money in the back of the bus, and we getting hustled all day, every day. But unless we create this critical mass, this sense of I'm so offended that I'm going to make sure, here comes the enema. And the enema is going to be mass participation up and down the ballot so that we can get rid of this constipation, not only of truth, but of credibility that speaks to the needs of regular, everyday folks. If we don't start getting ready for this thing now, they going to play this hustle all the way out. They still in the back of the bus running 3-card money. They'll run it again. And guess what? If it creates a little more illness, well, that accrues to that 1/5, 1/6 of the GDP that needs pharmaceuticals to make a whole lot of money in hospitals, all of that kind of stuff, right? So that feeds into the profit calculus. If it leads to a little more dysfunction, so profits are made because you got to pay a little bit more, you can't buy as much as you once did, that's part of the calculus. At the end of the day, this corporatocracy that's reinforced by corporate media that frames for us what are the issues that we should be concerned about, it's not for them to tell us, it's for us to tell them and to get their attention. And there's nothing that gets their attention like a good enema.
Truth. Enema. Thank you, Mandine Muhammad, for bringing that to everyone's attention. You got Dr. Wolf on it. You got Reverend Dr. Yuri on it. Yikes. Miss Flora, I'm sorry, Dr. Wolf. I mean, Because when you hear Miss Flora, you hear the real pain of people here on the ground, and they
Sure.
watch. And and so the thing is, while this foreign aid might be one thousandth of a percent, or 1/100th, or 1/10 of 1%, the fact is that's not what we're seeing. And the squeaky wheel gets the grease. The thing is,
Sure.
some people get a chance, get heard. The Miss Floras don't get heard. The American people don't get heard. And the
And they
people who
also
try,
don't get
and the
they
people
don't
who
get
speak,
good
and
framing.
well, no, no one was a better framer than Dr. King. We killed him. Reverend Jackson, we silenced. The people who speak for the people, that's what we do. We shut them up, shut them down. And folks are hurting out here, hurting. And so, there's going to be a real push, I think, on this, and I think, and the foreign aid is not going to end with Ukraine. I think Americans are going to start going through this budget with a fine tooth comb and say, hey, where am I in it?
I think I would say that maybe there's another story here, which is,
Okay.
hey, if you're told maybe the problem is this, you can be resting assured that's not the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because whatever the actual problem is kept off that menu. You have to fight to put it on the menu. So Ukraine, if you defund Ukraine or not, it will pass through no value to the average American. The social programs were cut before and separate from the Ukraine, right? And the people who are probably making these decisions will see Ukraine as an incredible deal because we can sell our 1 generation to 2 generation old weapons to Ukraine, not the newest best, with a reasonable provision that we can't sell them the newest best because the Russians might win. It'll fall into their hands. So we can sell them 1 to 2 generation old to the federal government, which will donate the money. And then the entire generation of people in Ukraine will die fighting America's most significant military enemy at the cheap. So that's what it looks like to them, right? And in terms of the spending, even the military spending, U.S. military spending, it's not large. So it is less than 10% of our spending on a single strike fighter, the F-35 strike fighter. We're spending more money to develop a plane to beat a hypothetical enemy in an air-to-air combat scenario, which we largely haven't had since World War II, than we're spending on the Ukraine, right? And that is a fact of the numbers, right? And I understand that's a little bit esoteric, but it isn't that much esoteric, right? We're spending more on food stamps in the Ukraine. I think we all know how stingy our food stamp spending is and where the money actually goes there. So, I agree. I just think that, for instance, getting all the money from the Ukraine would matter less than making a basic decision that many governments have made, including our own in the past, during inflation's other time, and say, hey, let's subsidize basic staple foods. We can fight about exactly what foods should get the subsidy, but the ones that don't kill people, like corn syrup, might be a good place to start. And so make it cheap to get bread, make it cheap to get milk, make it cheap to get potatoes, make it cheap to get basic vegetables and fruits, right? Subsidize small farmers and try to do it at a local level. And then you could put healthier food on America's table cheap. That is immediately valuable, and it introduces something which then becomes hard to take away. It introduces a real support for the notion that decent, healthy food, when you need it, as you need it, according to your appetites and your needs health-wise, is a right of everyone who finds themselves in these United States. That, by the way, is quite cheap. All jokes aside, that is cheap if you understand the budget, right? Quite cheap.
No,
probably even maybe as cheap as Ukraine. The problem is what we think is cheap and what we think is expensive has to do with what we're told and not the numbers.
That's true, but also this is what people are feeling, and this is what they're seeing. The fact is, we don't subsidize the global South the way that we do European countries or countries with a European bent. That's a problem. We let South Africa fester. We let all those Black folks get killed. But we're always eager to run into Europe and resolve
still
whatever.
Ongoing.
No. But I'm just saying when the MI6 and the CIA came together and got Mandela arrested, that's part of the story that we don't want to tell. And we kept him as a terrorist even as he was president of South Africa. And we let so that we can go on and rape South Africa and the global South. We continue to let them. The way that we treat We don't treat everybody equally. We don't. And
no, that argument I get. Being involved in Ukraine
I'm just saying that, but
is different.
But it's not
right?
just. But I'm just saying, Americans are tired of it. I mean, and I'm just saying, you're gonna have to deal with the fact that Americans are tired of not having a seat at the table, being on the menu. They're tired of watching all of this money as they see it go out. They're tired of seeing the president make an argument for Ukraine that he won't make for Lahaina or East Palestine, Ohio. You give these people who call themselves forced Americans, they are colonized. That's what they are. These are the indigenous people of Hawaii. You give them $700 per family? What? And yet you continue to shovel money, just for example, in Ukraine. That ain't working. People have peeped the game and they're tired of it. I know I am. And I peeped the game a long time ago. People are tired of that. Got it. Tired that I can put more money into foreign aid than I'll put into me. It's not right. And the scales have got to get balanced. Dr. Wolf, Max, they have to get this ain't right. American kids.
Yeah, I don't want to beat up that point. I think you're right on that point. I just think maybe it's just a part of me that's a little bit compulsive with the numbers because the training.
And you're right.
We are not putting a lot of money into foreign aid. We just don't. It's not what we spend on. So, like, you're right that people feel that way, and you're right that the optics are terrible, and you're right that there's a racialized double standard, and where we do intervene, right, and where we don't, right. So, for instance. But I mean, keep in mind the rhetoric of what we're doing in Ukraine may or may not exactly match the reality, right? So that's another problem. But look, leaving all that aside, can we do basic things for our people? Yes, we choose not to discipline them into taking jobs that are so unpleasant and pay so little that the collective wisdom of the people who run the country is no one would do that job if they had any other choice. That's what they've decided. If you want to change that equation, you have to go to that issue. That's a job. The conditions are terrible, the wages are terrible, and But even if you don't want to solve that problem because it's bigger or it's going to take a while, you can subsidize food, transport, medicine, and education.
There is no
which
question
everyone
about
else.
that.
Hear me out, though.
Yeah.
Everyone else has done to prevent the level of misery and suffering in their countries that we endure every day, which creates violence and substance abuse and hopelessness and mental illness, which afflict us up and down a billion different ways, right? So we're not having trouble solving this problem. We all know how to solve this problem. We're just not doing it. And that is the bigger story to me than Ukraine or gas prices. Those are all kind of symptoms of something else, at least to me, with my kind of particular view, which isn't better than someone else's.
Well, why aren't we solving this problem, Dr. Wolf?
Because having that problem jacks up the profits and keeps the people in power who are in power. I mean, I don't think that's a huge puzzle either. I don't think it's great for your career to be saying this on the open air, but I don't think it's a big mystery either. I think this is about as much of a mystery as the truth constipation. Like, the public needs to get the fiber of its demands into the body politic, right? And
but whenever somebody raises that question, they lock them out of the party. Whenever the Cornel West or the Bernie Sanders raise that question, they get locked out of the process.
Or they push to the edges, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I think then that this notion that the people don't have a voice, Reverend Jackson has been always big on this, is that, Dr. West is raising the issue, but he's a voice, right? What gets the attention of folks to say, oh my goodness, is folks in the street. When folks start showing up at these town hall meetings, showing up at these protests, showing up on the doorstep, making these demands, that forces a different lens. I mean, Big Brother Dwight, you know this better than anybody else on this call, right? That this whole notion of it can't be just left to Dr. Cornel West to raise the issue as a policy proposal. It's up to the people to demand it as it's a real time expectation. We're not waiting till the next election. We ain't waiting for you to go through all of the shenanigans and trying to figure out who's going to be. The people have a need right now. The government has the wherewithal right now. The question is there the political will? And since, political will is countered by this little physical condition called truth constipation, then we're here to help you get unlocked. We need you to come out of the stall and get into and on the floor so you can deal with the stuff that will put a bill before the president that addresses the needs of the people. I think it is literally at that point right now where the discomfort that is confronting the masses is going to turn into, hopefully, a mass movement of mass action on the doorsteps of government where they can no longer ignore that there's a real-time need that must be addressed. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem.
Because
And I will tell you the most controversial thing I can tell you as an economist, and you can choose to believe it or not, it will not reduce the profits of big companies to take care of the basic needs of Americans. It might actually save them. It could be a New Deal scenario here where you're saving business interests in the United States from their own worst impulse.
But
It's not
Reverend
even clear
Jackson,
that it hurts.
Reverend Jackson and the civil rights movement have been making that point forever now. They don't want to hear that. And I hear you, but you also have a lot of other people, a lot of other interests, domestic and international, who come in on
Sure.
our money. And that's a discussion that more and more Americans are getting engaged in every day, and they're tired of it. We're living in a time in which people don't trust the Supreme Court, either House of Congress, the presidency, those who are in authority. This system is not working for them. And what is dangerous and what is something that you got to watch, white people now feel the way Black people have felt and indigenous people have felt since before the founding of the Republic. And that is dangerous because white people are not accustomed to being cut out. They're accustomed to being brought in. So you now have civil war conditions in the United States, and they are worsening every day.
Yeah.
Dwight?
And to be respectful, I saw 1 million people in the streets when George Floyd got killed, and they still haven't passed the George Floyd bill. I saw students in the street, from all over the country, when they had the student movement, and they all slept in the streets and slept on Wall Street, and they still haven't forgiven them the student debt. I've seen when the TARP situation kicked in and the Wall Street stole the money. I saw the whole nation rise up and said, "Don't give them the money. Don't give them the money." And what did Congress do? They gave them the money, and they then spent the money on themselves and on bonuses.
On a two and a half page document from Goldman Sachs, they threatened Nancy Pelosi, the third in line to success to the presidency, threatened her with the shutting down of the economy. I remember it as if it were yesterday. And then they shut down after Americans broke the communication system in Congress, calling so furious. They said, then shut it down. We don't want to give Wall Street one more dime. What did they do? Then they shut down the communication system so Americans cannot get their complaints through. That is unsustainable and crazy.
I've been in the streets since I was 14, 13. I grew up in this movement, y'all. So I'm not new to this. But it's something different now.
What is different?
Is that it seems like the system is so entrenched and tied into the system itself, and that the people seem to have no redress. And it scares me because I think it is leading us toward violence and even on the brink of a civil war. That there has to be at least more give, much more compromise.
We're
at the
already
top.
we're already
Because
here.
I see the rich get richer and the poor getting poorer.
And
That's all I see.
you're right. I mean, the
And I'm
thing
not
is,
going to offer any solace. I think the
yeah.
war started already. So
Well,
I'm not going to be the guy who makes you feel better. But my point wasn't that power will concede, right? Or that we're going to do it because we could do it. We will only ever see progress if they're more scared of something else than that progress. I mean, that's American history.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
I agree with that too. I'm just saying that people.
I'm not happy about it, but I think if you have any sort of spend your time studying this stuff at all, it's hard to come away with a different conclusion.
There is no question about
We
that.
are on the brink. But I think we're on the brink, y'all. I think we're on the brink.
I think it started.
War.
I think it's already started. Most wars start before the official shots are fired, right? So before Fort Sumner, we were in a civil war, right? It wasn't clear how it was going to go. And until the shooting starts, there's always the possibility of a miraculous rescue, right? And because for a lot of reasons, including decency and taste, I don't know how far we want to run with our truth constipation analogy here, but I think things are impacted now, right? So I'm not sure that grandma's cure is going to work in this case, right? I might, certain reason to be hopeful always, but I think this has already started. I think that we are in the disinformation campaign and the siege that begins most wars, where you aggressively take resources against from who you're going to fight to weaken them and sicken them, right? Because you deny them food. That's what a siege is, right? You deny food and water and the ability to expel waste from a town, village, country, region you're going to hit. You start taking away its ability to sort of be a healthy organism, and you start the disinformation campaigns to try to get your side fired up, right? I think when the former president goes on TV and threatens people, he is trying, not always successfully, to direct people to intimidate, frighten, possibly use physical force against his enemies. And I think that is part of the reason he draws some of the support he does. Because I think there's people who have wanted that war for a long time because they think they can win it, or because they're so angry they didn't think it through, or because they think that that war will become less winnable in the future because of the way the country and the world are shifting, right? Because we know certain things about the track the world's on. I don't know that these things need to be so important to people, but some people get hung up on them, which is the pole of economic power shifting to Asia for a lot of reasons. This is not new or news, but maybe not everyone thinks about it all the time. So we know that the future economic engine, to some extent already the economic engine of the world, is Asia, okay? More than Europe and the US, although they'll still be important. So we know that's a fact. We know that the demographics of Europe and the United States are changing. And so that obviously the timing is different in different countries, but the majority of people will be folks who were once thought of as ethnic and racial minorities. At some point, different countries in the next 5 to 10 years to as much as 30, 40 years away, but this generation will see it, right? So it's coming. And we have the most outrageous concentration of wealth we've seen without a revolution anyway. So you have the geopolitical, you have the ethnic and social, and then you have the economic conditions for a kind of violent jump ball scenario. And then you just, I think, have a chronic and catastrophic loss of faith in institutions and experts in the United States. Because a lot of people have come to the opinion that institutions and experts are just weaponized against them by the elite, which has some truth to it. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the story right now. And that is a Civil War story.
I think that's the value of the microanalysis, Dr. Wolf. I think that's where the value of the academic like you comes and plays itself at the highest level, because it helps people understand the big picture and why what's happening at the bottom, because all they feel is the effects. They don't understand the cause. So I really appreciate your analysis.
And yours, because the best teacher I ever had told us, remember when you study this thing, statistics is history with the tears wiped dry. Every number is a person. It's a dream broken. It's an opportunity grasped. It's a mother crying by a grave. Don't forget that when you study your economics. there's blood in all the statistics.
Always blood in the statistics. Because it's flesh and blood. These are people. And so when I hear Miss Flora, are you still there? She might have had to leave.
I am still here, but I have.
Oh, you have to go. Well, your closing thought. I'm glad you're part of the panel today.
Yes, I don't want the government to be shutting down, and I don't want them to use bargaining chips to shut down the government. And I just think that should not be a part of our government at all, the shutting down of the government. And we need to negotiate with different Congress people to make sure that you get the deal that you want. That should not be a part of our government. And when people are looking from the outside in other countries, Asia is going to be a superpower. They already have automobiles in California that they are the EV automobiles, and they are doing the navigating from China. So they're getting a good idea as to how our people live and where our streets are. So we need to be mindful.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be mindful.
Mm-hmm.
There is others that are watching our vulnerability.
Remember, there are bankers, okay? These, we keep acting like we're going over to China and we're getting them straight and letting them know these folks hold part of our debt, Miss Flora. So it would benefit us a great deal, not to interrupt, but just to engage you, for us to really start digging down and learning the truth. I mean, otherwise you might as well just be a subject in a monarchy. We're citizens of a republic, which means we have to take the bull by the horns and get this information ourselves and make some decisions and make the people you elect to work for you. And then we have to march on the corporations. We have to march on, not just on Washington, but on corporations. Shut them down. They're running the government. What did your former senator Dick Durbin said when Wall Street was continuing to rape us openly in 2008? He said, "Look," he just threw his hands up, figuratively speaking. He said, "Who am I kidding? The bankers run this place, huh? What is this? This international cartel that has got us by the throat. It's ridiculous."
Yeah, but we make the bank rich. When we get loans, we're making the bank rich. They charge us fees. That's astronomical.
And aren't you tired of
it?
Rich? Aren't you tired of it?
Yeah, and I'm tired of it, and I'm sure more people are tired of it.
Absolutely.
We have to get loans. Give us no free grants or anything like that for a home. We get a loan. So people, when they see that the government is spending money elsewhere, and they still have to get loans, and the students still have to get loans, and they just brought in several Ukrainians that went to college and got in housing for free in this community. So people are not going to feel very well about that, because I don't care if you are black, brown, white, or whatever color. If you've been here in America for 40 generations, you don't feel like you have been respected and have had an opportunity to be wealthy.
And you've not been subsidized. Everybody else, Europeans get subsidized routinely. That's why this is a land of milk and honey and opportunity. Black people built this country. This country was not built by immigrants. It was built by Black people, and we were unpaid. And people are angry about not getting. I mean, and Black folks came out of slavery, pushing, building, creating. Not just, there were a whole lot of Black Wall Streets. And white people destroyed everyone, Max, and Reverend Dr. Yeary, and Attorney Jones, if you're still there, and Dwight McGee. Folks are sick of this. It's just unfair.
And we can't just move on.
No.
We're not going to let you whitewash our history. That's not going to happen because somebody is going to speak up. And I'm, for one, always thinking I have a podcast. I just started it in May called Chosen 60 Plus. I've been chosen to get 60 plus years. So I have something
What is
to
it?
say. Chosen, CHOZN 60 plus.
CHOZEN 60.
No, CHOZN.
ZN.
CHO.
ZN plus 6. Is it the symbol plus or is it PLUS?
It's the symbol plus.
Okay. All right. Okay. When does it come on?
Yeah,
Well, I
just
guess.
want to share my knowledge.
Okay.
I'm a retired teacher, so I've been many places, and I have some knowledge.
No. I wasn't questioning whether you had the right to do it or not, or whether you did have the stuff. I hear you. I just wanted to know so you could tell people about it while you're here. That's all.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm glad to be a part of your panel today. And I love each and every one of the people that you have on your show daily. And Dr. Dwight, Dr. Wolf, you are all intellectuals. And because you're intellectuals, not everyone is going to be able to grasp what you're saying, even though you're telling them the truth.
So said the
That's
teacher,
all I have to say.
Miss Flora.
Yeah.
Rapping us on our knuckles with her ruler. I can't.
Take care and have a blessed day, everyone.
Would you call in again, Miss Flora?
Thank you.
Nice to speak with you.
Reverend Dr. Yuri, I'm going to get some closing thoughts from everybody. I have been running long all week long. I want Dr. Wolf to close us out, but Reverend Dr. Yuri, your thoughts? I mean, I'm so glad Miss Flora called in. I'm glad that Paul, I've missed a few other callers, but I'm glad that you all called in because people really are engaged and they want to be heard, Reverend Dr. Yuri. And they have a lot to say. And I think that we have to begin to really amplify the lived experiences of the audience. They're not crazy. They're living this stuff every day. Reverend Dr. Yuri?
Well, they are living it every day. Back to Big Brother Dwight's point about the tension in this moment, and it's not just the feeling of the threat of violence. We've seen it, right? The protests after George Floyd were met with force in many places. And so the use of force as a tool and a tactic of the state to keep things in order has given a bit of cover to the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act from being passed. The issues of a Supreme Court that is now leaning so far right that they've fallen out of their chairs in some instances. They just went into another session. We'll see another set of cases or table of cases, if you will, that will go right to the core. But I do think it is still up to the people for them to exercise what they always have, and that's the sense of agency. They get to participate. They don't just get to be moved on, they get to move themselves. And what does that look like? That's where the conversation around civics ahead of this next election, with all of the
Hi, Miss Jackson.
cannery that's going on about.
Unfortunately, I'm going to need this studio to record an upcoming show.
Okay,
so
well,
that their voice can be heard.
You know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to have to brief everyone. I've got to turn the studio over. And can I give two people 2 minutes? Can I get that?
Yes.
Okay.
Go for it.
Literally 1 minute, Dwight. 1 minute. I've got to release the studio.
Give it to Dr. Wolf.
Okay.
My minute, Dr. Wolf.
Dr. Wolf, 2 minutes. Close us out.
I don't know I can do justice to the generosity. I think for me, it's always interesting to see how the same or some version of the same reality looks so different in different people's eyes. And it's a little bit a good time to sort of check your own view for me, which is a sort of hands on the elephant analogy. So I'll leave with that. If you have a bunch of blind folks and we're all blind to experiences other than our own, to some extent. Then they put their hand on the ear and they think the elephant is a leaf, and they put their hand on the leg and they think it's a tree, and they put their hand on the tail and they think it's a plant of some kind. So the truth is, we all have very partial pictures, all of which are valuable to be reassembled into some whole understanding. But I think what unites left and right and old and young and every ethnic group and every age group and all the different tapestry of difference here is people are pretty convinced things aren't working well for them, for an awful lot of people. The other thing that I think defines the moment is the people who the system is working well for are kind of blithely unaware that they think that everyone's kind of doing okay too, and that they can take more. And that's history's track for. And if you have a way of taking more, this much more, for this long, you believe you can do it again. And in some way or another, different factions, right, left, center, anymore, and they're still trying. And that trigger can't get pulled without avoiding, if we want to avoid really a terrible situation. And the last thing is, I do think extreme entitlement defines that moment, like having a debauched, failed serial criminal as your party leader threatening people in a trial. And I think we've gotten the sort of Jerry Springer national political moment here. And I don't know when the audience erupts or how it erupts, but I think that's what determines how the show ends.
Everyone, that is it. I want to thank you. Thank you, Henry, for being so generous with your time. I love you, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Dr. Wolf, love you. Dwight, love you. Jones, love you. Reverend Dr. Ewing, love you, love you, love you, love you. We love you, morning stars. We do this for and with you. Love you, everybody. God bless.